Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corn Productions with my co-host Stacie, here to talk about Under the Dome Season 1, and we're doing a part 1 of this. We're going to do multiple parts, doing the first 6 episodes. We were originally going to cover the entire season. As we were writing our notes, we realized that was kind of crazy, so we decided to go this way instead. The series was based on a Stephen King book by the same name, created by Brian K. Vaughan. He was the executive producer on the series for Season 1 and the first 3 episodes of Season 2 before not being involved in Season 3 at all. Stephen King was also an executive producer on this show for the first couple of seasons, not in Season 3. And Jack Bender, who was one of our creators and directors from and Lost. From is one of the reasons why we're talking about this particular series, and Jack Bender's involvement is the reason for that. He left after Season 2, and which is actually a good thing, because I was kind of worried about Season 3 descended into complete nonsense, and I was kind of worried about Jack Bender's involvement, but he wasn't involved in Season 3, so there's that. The show ran from 2013 to 2015 for 3 seasons. The series description reads as follows. An invisible and mysterious force field descends upon a small actual town of Chester's Mill, Maine, USA, trapping residents inside, cut off from the rest of civilization. The trapped townspeople must discover the secrets and purpose of the dome, or spear, and its origins, while coming to learn more than they ever knew about each other, and the animals too. That's part of the episode's description.
And the animals too?
Yeah, I don't...
Where'd you pull that description from?
I got that from Internet Movie Database. I didn't even notice that was part of it. I didn't actually read it. I was just like, okay, copy and paste, and yeah. Wow, that's pretty weird. Before we go any further, I'll tell you a couple of things. One, this is not a spoiler-free podcast. If you haven't watched the episodes, I would say 1 through 6, and to be real here, we're probably going to talk future seasons too. So I'd highly recommend you just watch the series.
We're going to, do a series of From episodes, and we're eventually going to talk.
Under the Dome, you mean?
Oh yeah, Under the Dome.
And we are talking From as well, but not.
Wow. So, you probably want to watch all 3 seasons before listening to us, but we'll try and stay focused on the episodes we're talking about for the most part.
Absolutely no promises on that one.
Yeah.
Secondly, if you are listening on one of the platforms that this podcast is now available on, please follow and feel free to check out my YouTube channel, Corn Productions, where additional content can be discovered. If you're already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, and subscribe to my channel. Alright, so what we have here is a Stephen King adaptation. And those are pretty hit and miss.
Yeah.
Name some Stephen King works that you actually saw, like that were turned into movies or TV shows.
Oh my! There's a lot. Mm-hmm. One of my favorites is Langoliers. Mm-hmm. I think that one is a hit for me, anyways. I know a lot of people complain about the terrible CGI, but if you ignore that, because of how long ago it was made, I think they did a good job turning what was a short story into like a really long. It was like a mini-series, basically. That also starred Dean Stockwell, which who we talk about quite frequently during our Quantum Leap podcast. And I think that one was almost intentionally cheesy. Yeah. Like the acting, and the special effects. I think it was not really meant They did it as a made-for-TV mini-series. It obviously doesn't have some Hollywood, blockbuster budget. But that's probably my favorite Stephen King adaptation.
And for me, the original It miniseries, nowadays it's not looked on as too favorably, but back when I was a kid, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's decent too.
Yeah, the original Stand miniseries, did you see that one?
I've never seen any of the versions of The Stand, actually. None of them.
I like the original version. The new one, I actually did a review on the new one way back in the day. I was talking about the first 3 episodes. I didn't bother with the rest of the series. But that was kind of badly done mainly because they basically used non-linear storytelling in a way that doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, everybody trying to monopolize on what This Is Us did.
It was like going back and forth in a way that kind of like made no sense for the narrative whatsoever. They just made they made a lot of weird choices in that one that almost downplayed the drama, whereas it seemed to me like they should be doing. And it was changes from the book. So it was making changes from the book to make it less dramatic, which makes no sense to me. But yeah, I was thinking of taking a rewatch of that as well, like just doing a quick rewatch of this parts of that series that I didn't cover. But as far as this series goes, I think this kind of falls on like somewhere like not quite in hit or miss territory. I think it falls in the middle.
Yeah. So okay, so my experience with Under the Dome, I watched it when it originally aired. This is one I watched every week, was dedicated to this series. And I mean, we'll talk about this more as we get to the seasons, but I'll give my opinion straight up front because there's no hiding it. I think this started strong and went south very quickly.
Yes.
And I will clearly say it's from season to season. Each of the 3 seasons, you can feel a change in this show.
Right.
And it's a weird change. It doesn't flow nicely. And, you know, by the time we get to season 3, the only reason I watch season 3 is because you're already in it and you just keep going. Kind of, you know, how we feel about Sliders. We just took a sharp turn left at some point. That
definitely went downhill really quick. But I feel like it went with quality a little bit longer than this show did.
Yeah, well, I mean, this show is 3 seasons. It's I don't have the total episode count, but it's like 30-something
39 episodes, I think, is the total episodes. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it is what it is. I like the concept. I like where we start. And like these 6 episodes we're talking about is probably my favorite, you know. And by the time you get to the end of season 1, you can feel it starting to be like, okay, where are we going with this? And then season 2 is like, well, okay. And then season 3 is like, nope.
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they originally intended for this just to be 1 season.
They did. So I remember when this first was being advertised as a limited series. And I don't know exactly when they made the decision to change that, but we were talking about this off camera. I feel like, you know, it had to have been somewhere in the middle of season 1 they changed their mind, because season 1 definitely didn't end in a way that they meant for it to end. Right? And I'm curious where their original plan was for the show to be 1 season, where they were going with that ending in, you know, a handful of episodes.
Right, yeah. I mean, based on, like, the, you know, how much time they spent on other things in the first 5 episodes or so, it's like how were you getting 1 season out of this? Like, what story were you trying to tell?
It wasn't just originally planned that way. Like, it was advertised on TV that way, limited series, and then all of a sudden we were like, oh, there's going to be another season, and it was like, yay. And one thing, you know, to mention is obviously this is an adaptation of a book, so there's the question of how does it compare to the book. And I can't answer that entirely. I'm actually reading the book right now for the first time ever. I'm halfway through the book.
I actually started doing it after you, kind of like how I went after you rewatching this series.
Oh, you're reading the book?
Yes. I didn't get very far with it.
It's a long book.
Yeah.
It's like 1,100 pages.
I think I did like the first couple of chapters. But yeah, I mean, like, you know, when we're talking about, I don't mind when we make changes from book to screen.
Right.
Because, you know, books and movies and TV, those are totally different mediums.
Right.
And you have to make changes in order for it to make dramatic sense when you're, you know, like watching a TV show. But at the same time, yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that exactly.
Okay. But and now that I know you're reading the book, we can, once we're both done with it, actually do an episode just comparing the book to the series.
Right. So we can do a lot of Under the Dome, assuming, of course, that there's any interest in this whatsoever. But, so yeah, your overall thoughts on season 1 is basically...
Pretty good.
Yeah. Pretty good first season.
Ignoring what happens later, I like where we're at in season 1. I like the characters. I think we got some great acting. Again, the setup, like, you know, this story, obviously something that would have always interested me. And as you mentioned, it's very similar to From, which is why this has been on our minds, right? Because it's been coming up in our From Facebook groups.
Yes.
People are constantly saying, well, From's on hiatus. What can I watch now? And Under the Dome's always on people's recommendations lists because it's a you know, a similar story at its core, as, you know, it's a group of people trapped somewhere and they can't leave.
I hear some people say that Under the Dome is actually better than From, and I don't quite get that, especially, you know, later seasons, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know where From's going, but obviously we are partial to From.
Right.
Being that, you know, it's something we're actively covering as it's airing.
Right. Recency bias and all. Yeah, I mean, like, it's kind of hard for me to talk about the characters specifically in just this one season because it's colored by things that happen after.
Yeah.
And overall, all of these characters' arcs are incoherent throughout the series. I think it's relatively good in season 1, but once we get into season 2 and 3, it's like, yeah, the arcs don't make any specific sense. It's specifically, I'm thinking of Junior, his arc throughout the series.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess okay, so originally we were not going to like go episode by episode, but then when we started taking our notes, we found it kind of hard to not do that because that's how we usually do things.
Right. So we're going to go episode by episode, but not necessarily scene by scene.
Right. Yeah, we're going to
kind of cover the broad strokes of the episode, and I'm not sure exactly how you took your notes, but I know mine, I kind of more lumped like what happens with different, characters and different plot lines within the episode together, as opposed to a scene by scene where you go back and forth between all the stories.
Yeah, speaking of incoherent, my notes are kind of all over the place and incoherent.
We'll talk about each episode kind of isolated, but we're going to be jumping all over the place within the episode. I think is where we're at.
Right.
And also, we're going to be introducing to all our characters, so we're going to talk a little bit about them. This might be a little bit long video today. Yeah,
more than likely. That's one of the reasons why we broke it up, is we didn't want a 6-hour podcast, which we didn't think anybody would actually listen to. So starting with episode 1, we have the pilot, and we have the first images of a baby bird, which kind of reminds me of Vivarium a little bit.
Yeah.
It's not the same concept, they're not doing the same thing.
Right, but I mean, that's also a story about people being trapped.
Right.
In a place they can't leave. And so, yeah, we covered that movie. If you're interested, go find that video.
Yep. And we have the first scene with Dean Norris, who's he's playing Big Jim Remy in this scene. He's a political type. Dean Norris was in, of course, Hank in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. And he's honestly a better actor than the show deserves. I don't mean that necessarily in the first season, but as it goes along, it's like, when it becomes utter dreck, it's like, Dean Norris is better than this. He deserves better than this. But yeah, he seems just like a typical politician type.
Yeah, so he's a councilman, and we quickly learn he's the only elected official that ends up trapped under the dome, because everybody else, all of the other town officials, are out of town for a parade. A parade that's happening at the next town over Westlake. So he's the only one who's here. He's also a used car salesman. That can give you a lot about his character right there.
Right,
He's very stereotypicalized as, the bullshitter. He wants to cut a deal. He's a people pleaser.
Yeah.
I mean, overall, Big Jim Rennie's not a great guy.
Yeah, it's funny because they keep oscillating throughout the series between, Jim being a hero versus Jim being a bad guy, which actually, if you really think about his character, it does make sense for him because he's the politician. He's not really on the side of good or bad. He's on the side of what's convenient for him.
I think when it comes down to it, Big Jim he thinks everything he's doing is for the good, for the best. He thinks he's doing everything for the town. And a lot of times he is doing what is best for the town, but only because it happens to line up with what's best for him.
Right.
His ultimate goal is to just be the hero. He wants everybody to like him. And
there's a bit of narcissist in his character.
He has no problems doing anything to get what he wants. He has no morals when it comes to his own actions.
Yeah. He doesn't have a very strong moral compass or any kind of compass of any kind in that regard. So we have our first Junior and Angie sex scene. Well, it's the only sex scene between them, but it's one of the first scenes. Junior's all in love, and Angie not so much. She considers this a summer fling. Junior is supposed to go off to college, so he reveals that he's not going to do that. Angie, meanwhile, seems to be like a towner who's going to stay and work in the diner. And this Junior character is one of the main reasons that I initially brought up talking about Under the Dome.
Okay.
His arc and how they treat his character throughout, especially in season 2, really kind of annoyed me. Season 1, it makes sense, but once we get to season 2, it's like, you're kind of treating this character like a hero. He's very much not.
Yeah. So this is Junior. James Rennie Jr. This is the son of Big Jim, and he's played by Alexander Koch.
I was curious about that pronunciation.
And also I'm not sure if I pronounced it right. And then we also have an actor, James Alcorn, who plays a younger version of him throughout the season in some flashbacky type scenes. So Junior's a college dropout. We learn right here, when he's talking to Angie, that he's not going back to school. He's decided to stay home. The Dome wasn't going to give him a choice in that matter anyways.
Right.
But yeah, he's dropped out of college. He's afraid to tell Big Jim that. And like you said, he had this summer fling with Angie McAllister, but he's convinced he's in love with her. He's loved her since 3rd grade. And he doesn't take her rejection very well. We've all been there. We've all suffered from rejection, especially at a young age, or me at an old age nowadays. But, and I can sympathize with that. I don't sympathize with anything else he does after that. He gets kind of violent with her in the scene, like mildly violent, but still enough to show some concern. Now, actually, it's interesting because in the book, I haven't gotten this far, but you mentioned that he in the book is very much a stone cold killer. Yeah. So, and I don't want to talk too much about the book while we do this, because then we'll never finish these videos. We'll do like a real deep comparison later, I think, now, especially since I know you're reading it, and once we actually know the whole story. I'm about halfway right now. But yeah, comparing Junior from the show to Junior in the book, Junior in the show is an angel. So, and still they didn't make him it seems like they were trying to make him like more of a person that you can relate to, more of a person that you could see as a hero, but they didn't really go far enough. Yeah. They made him not a killer, and that's an improvement, but, we'll get into that later, but still, they didn't really... I mean, he does kill people eventually. Right. So, Junior is a psychopath. Right. Either version of him we're talking about. He's a psychopath. He's just not quite fully there yet when we meet him. By the way, Angie is played by Britt Robinson. She has 58 acting credits, including Cherry, which is a movie that I rather enjoy. She's currently in the Rookie spinoff, The Rookie Feds. The Rookie Feds, she's starring in that show. And one thing I noticed was that she has a butterfly tattoo on her shoulder. She does, which we get a lot of close-ups on during these early episodes. And Angie's a waitress at the Sweetbriar Rose, which is the local diner. She also works as a candy striper at the clinic while she volunteers there. We'll learn later that, she's mandated to do that. And she's the sister of another one of our main characters. Right. She's the big sister of Joe. Who doesn't actually exist in the book as far as I've heard. Joe exists in the book, but they're not siblings. Oh, okay. They're two totally unrelated characters. Okay, I read somewhere that he didn't actually exist even in the book. No, Joe's a big character in the book, but he's a 13-year-old boy, not like 16. Gotcha. And so they aged him not related to Angie. And he's played by Colin Ford in this series. Colin Ford, who has a lot of acting credits for a young actor. He was in Supernatural. He played the younger version of one of those characters. I didn't watch Supernatural. He's done voice work on Family Guy. He was starred in the 2019 show Daybreak, as well as the 2022 show Solar. Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah, so he's got full credits on both of those series. And I remember you remarking that his picture in his Internet Movie Database profile doesn't look anything like him. Anything like Joe. He has grown a lot since 2013, 2015. And that's actually something watching the show. When you start season 3, he, out of all the people, looks different. Yes. He had a huge growth spurt change between seasons 2 and 3. Yeah. That was the most notable change to me. You see that in shows. And, I think that's one of the reasons we don't have kids in this series. There's a lot of kids in the book. Right. Including Joe and Nori and Ben. They're 13-year-old kids in the book. And I'm pretty sure that's the reason they're not in the show, is because they knew they were going to be, actually I say that now and I'm thinking, they planned on only doing one season, but maybe they had some hope that they were going to get to do more. And, you can't over multiple years film kids who are supposed to be in a story that takes place over weeks, not years.
Like, hey there, from.
Yeah.
With the pacing of that show, it's going to be really
Simon Webster is aging quickly.
Yes, he's 11 years old now, and he's far.
He's playing an 8-year-old.
Right.
In a show that ages days over a year.
Right, pretty much. So we meet Julie Shumway, and she's going to go see, I forgot her character's name.
Andrea Grinnell.
Andrea Grinnell. She's the editor of The Independent.
Julia is.
Julie, yes. And she has the same name as a character in From. Same name as a coworker of mine, and almost the same name as my daughter.
Actually, she does have the same name as your daughter.
She's Julia?
She's Julia.
Oh, I keep
Do you have her in Julia as your note?
I have her as in Julia. Actually, I think I alternate.
Her name's Julia.
Oh, okay.
Julia Shumway, the name of your daughter.
The name of my daughter.
Not the name of the character from and all that other stuff.
Okay. So the name of my daughter. So, wow, they actually...
And we talked about this last time we talked about this.
I'm sure we did. My memory's terrible nowadays. So actually, this was after my daughter was born, so they could have named the character after my kid.
Well, no, they named her after the character in the book.
Right.
Yeah, if you're new to our channel and you this is the first thing you're listening to because you were just looking for something about Under the Dome, you should know that Dave's really bad about names.
or anything that involves memory,
like pronouncing names. Remembering their name. I'm not great either.
Right.
But Dave's really bad at it.
Okay, so she's of the Independent newspaper, and she's there investigating a story about propane, which becomes a big subplot throughout the
so story. Andrea called her up because Andrea's kind of a nosy neighbor. She's a concerned citizen, played by Dale Ruel, and she has been witnessing from her house across a field all these propane trucks keep coming, and like ridiculous amounts of propane has been delivered over the last 2 weeks. Now Andrea told the sheriff about this. The sheriff said everything's fine, it's just the town reserves getting backed up, but she said he sounded nervous, and that man has never sounded nervous a day in his life. So she thinks something's up, so now she's gone to the press. And Julia believes her and says, okay, I'll look into that. Like, sounds like there's a story there. And there is a story there.
Yes.
But you know what? Thank goodness for these characters that this is happening. Because that propane's going to come in handy.
It is very convenient. We are next introduced to Dale Barbara, a.k.a. Barbie, who's introduced to burying a body.
Yeah, so he's burying a body.
It's kind of curious. In my notes it says burning a body, but that's not what happened.
Burying.
So he's a mysterious figure at this point. He's played by Mike Vogel, and he's been in a bunch of things that I watch, but I don't recognize him from any of it.
Yeah, most notably for me, I noted, and calling off things people have been, and obviously most of these people have really huge credits to them. So we're just picking out things that happen to be notable to us. For whatever reason, they stood out to either of us, but not to discredit anything else these people may have done in their careers.
Yes, of course.
So he was in Bates Motel.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is an awesome series. I love that one. Based obviously on Psycho.
Right.
And he was, kind of a minor character in that, but he was in several episodes of that. He was in a show called Sex Life that I actually watched recently. He played the husband in that, and. You were just saying you didn't recognize him. I saw that in the credits and I was like, wow, I had no idea that was him. I watched that show like within the last year.
It's interesting because I was thinking about checking out that series, mainly because I noticed he was in it. And I was figuring, just taking a look to see what other stuff he's done to get a feel for his career. But, yeah, I haven't done that yet.
But now knowing it's him, I'm like, oh yeah. So you're terrible with names. I'm horrible with faces.
Right, yeah.
I'll see I check IMDb religiously, and not because of the podcast. That too. But I will see somebody and be like, I recognize this person. Why do I recognize them? Let me look at IMDb. And then it's like, oh yeah, they're the main star of something I watch. No wonder I recognize them, but I couldn't place them.
In some cases, that's because people age or because they look very different from how they do in other series.
I have a hard time placing actors to different characters. I'll usually recognize that I know them, but why I know them, I have a hard time with.
We are next introduced to Sheriff Duke driving a car with his deputy Linda. Yes. Duke is played by Jeff Bowie, who was in 34 episodes of Lost. and you didn't even recognize that.
I did it
when I brought that up to you.
You told me. I was like, that was him, really?
Yep.
Like, once you told me he was in Lost, I realized who he played, but I hadn't made that connection on my own.
He looks very different in this series versus Lost, and he's not in this series for very long.
Yeah. So Sheriff Duke Perkins, who I just mentioned, was nervous about Andrea knowing about this propane deal, and we'll soon learn that he's in on it.
Yeah, to a limited extent, but he's not really like deep into it, but he's definitely part of the conspiracy in some way. Linda is played by Natalie Martinez, and she actually reminded me of Erica Serra, who played Jo in Eureka.
Yeah.
And actually, they're very similar characters. Right.
And during watching this show, that's something that I had picked up on and was looking at. And I remember people were talking about that. Their characters are presented very similarly, you know, and they're, you know, being seen wearing a police uniform with their hair, you know, up in police regulation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very easy mistake to make. And they also have very similar kind of raspy voices. She also appeared in 2 episodes of the recent The Stand miniseries, the inferior one, that I talked about at the top. They drive by Barbie, and they are very interested in his plates. He gets paranoid driving by them, and he ends up running himself off the road, which could be a good thing or a bad thing. Either he gets, you know, destroyed running through the dome, like it falls on his car, cuts it in half, or he makes it out. So, you know, one scenario good, the other one not so much.
Which, I mean, if you started reading the book, you know, that actually is very similar to where his situation was in the book, although he was walking in the book.
That, yeah.
That's where he goes through this whole thing of being like, well, I almost made it out, but I also could have ended up crashing.
Right.
Natalie Martinez also, before we move on, she actually has a lot of things that I found notable in her IMDb. She starred in a show called I-Land. I don't know if you've heard of that one. That was kind of a trippy show. It was like a 1-season limited series. It had a good ending, so it was meant to have 1 season.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, that's a trippy show. I don't want to spoil it, so I won't really say what it was, but it's about people who wake up on an island a little bit. You know, it's a little bit like Lost, where they're on an island and they don't know why they're there, and there's some weird stuff happening. She was also in a recent series called The Crossing.
Okay.
Which I started watching that one, but I gave up on it. I feel like it was kind of alien invasion related. I might be misquoting that. And she was in Ordinary Joe.
Okay. Yeah.
Which I haven't watched.
I heard of it. But
that one unfortunately got canceled after 1 season. But it's something that, I forget which fandom was talking about this. It was either the same time as the Save Timeless campaign was going on, or the Save Manifest campaign, which was like 2 years apart from each other. I'm not sure which of those it was, but one of those. So I was heavily involved in both of those. The Save Ordinary Joe thing was going on at the same time, and there was a lot of crossover between the fans. So I know it's something I would like. I just haven't watched it because I know it was canceled after 1 season. So.
Right. Yeah, and that you wouldn't want to be left without, you know, closure and all that.
Yeah.
All right, so at this point, the dome comes down, cuts a cow in half, and I believe nobody crashes, but not yet. Anyway.
Not yet. So yeah, it was just like, what just happened? And this is right near where, you know, Barbie is, his car, and he sees this cow, and you can't see the dome, right? Like, we can kind of see it, like, for production reasons, but they don't know there's a dome.
Right.
And so the town's completely cut off from the outside world. Power has been lost. There's no power in the town. And, yeah, it's very, very puzzling. And then, you know, we, of course, get a lot of excitement as people learn about this barrier.
Right. And this is when Barbie ends up meeting Joe for the first time. They notice a bird crashing into the dome. It dies instantly, breaks its neck. And then the next thing we know, a plane crashes into the dome, which is very reminiscent of what actually happens in the book.
Yes.
In the book, it's a hedgehog or something like that ends up getting cut in half, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah, they went more dramatic with the cow for visual purposes.
And I think the plane was cut in half in the book and not just crashed into it or something like that. It was.
No, I crashed into it.
Okay, I thought it was like it got like split or something.
I don't think so.
No? Okay. But yeah, so, I mean, that Joe is like basically, you know, he has flying plane parts coming in his way. Barbie pushes him out of the way, and we see a leg, which is something that's that was mentioned in the book as well, like a body part that you see from the
so,
former owner of the plane.
Obviously the people who were in this plane didn't make it. So where we're at right now, this land is this is the farm that Joe McAllister lives on. Mm-hmm. And Angie doesn't live there anymore, but it's her parents' house. And they're not there. They got caught outside of the dome. So Joe and Angie are on their own without any parents to be seen.
And, okay, so then we go to the radio station, and where we see Philip. And the tech, who is Dodie.
Yeah, so we have Phil Bushy and Dodie Weaver run the radio station. He's the DJ. She does all the
tech stuff,
behind-the-scenes stuff. Mm-hmm.
And he's played by Nicholas Strong. He only has like 5 acting credits for himself.
Yeah, he's appeared in a few episodes of Nashville. Mm-hmm. It was the most standout thing that caught my attention.
When we're talking about incoherent arcs, he's consistent within season 1, but after that,
he's just there. Yeah, and they use him to fill. Yeah, we'll talk to him about it when we get to those episodes,
when we talk to like season 2, basically.
Phil.
Dodie is played by Jolene Purdy, who is in 5 episodes of Firefly Lane, which is a show I know you watch.
Yeah, and I read that book as well. Oh. She played the assistant. Okay. So she wasn't a huge character, but she was definitely in it. Mm-hmm. She was also in Orange is the New Black. And I just recently saw a movie starring her called Unseen. You did mention that, yeah. Unseen is the name of that movie. I forget what it was on, maybe Netflix. Mm-hmm. That was a fun kind of action-packed movie.
We then have the sheriff and Linda end up meeting with Barbie and Joe, and eventually Big Jim Rennie ends up there. Linda's fiance is on the other side. He's a firefighter and firefighter, and realizes that they can't talk, which is a change from the book. Basically, you can talk to the dome. Here, not so much.
Yeah, the dome is soundproof, we learned. Mm-hmm. And they can't hear each other at all. They can't hear the sirens. And I think they made that decision probably just for simplicity of we don't want to spend a lot of time showing people communicating with people on the outside, right? We wanted them to be more isolated for the drama behind the series. And
they all realize they're trapped. Dun, dun, dun. Barbie and Julia end up meeting. She arrives on the scene and her car is quickly hijacked by the sheriff. We are then introduced to Caroline and Alice, mother of Nori.
Mm-hmm. Carolyn Hill, Alice Calvert, and Nori Calvert Hill.
And they were unfortunately in town getting some gas. I think they were on their way.
Yeah, they were passing through. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they were on their way bringing Nori to... I forget exactly what they called it.
It was like some kind of summer camp?
It was a camp, but it's kind of like a reform school type thing. She's going there because she's a troubled youth. Mm-hmm. And she's being sent there to get her act together. Mm-hmm. And they live in LA, so they're pretty far from home. They've traveled across the country for this. So it must be a pretty well-known place. Mm-hmm.
Caroline is played by Alicia Hines, who was in Lost, I believe, for 1 episode.
She did have 1 episode of Lost. She also was in 1 episode of Stargate 1. Yep. And she's a star of the show 911.
Oh, okay.
She's a regular in that series.
And meanwhile, Alice is played by Samantha Mathis, who I've seen in plenty of things. Most notably for me, she was in an episode of House. She was also in Broken Arrow, a movie with Christian Slater that I particularly enjoyed. That was I forgot who directed that, but it was a famous acting director at the time. Johnny Woo, I think it was, or something along those lines. Yeah, so she's had quite a career.
She was in The Strain.
Yep.
Which is another one that keeps coming up on lists that people suggest to watch. She was in Salem's Lot, another Stephen King adaptation.
Yep.
And you mentioned she was in an episode of House. She was also in an episode of Lost.
Yes.
Although not the same episode.
Wouldn't that be funny if they were?
So yeah, and I don't think it gets mentioned in this episode specifically, but Carolyn is a lawyer and Alice is a psychologist who has some medical training. That'll become important. She's also diabetic, important to note.
Yes.
And Nori is played by Mackenzie Linz.
Yep.
She only has 2 credits since Under the Dome. They're both movies.
She doesn't have a big career.
She was in a 2018 movie called Love, Simon and a 2019 movie called Flying Cars. And I haven't seen either of those, so I don't know if she just decided she doesn't want to act or what she's doing, but I thought she was decent acting in this series.
She's, I enjoyed her character in the series. She's still pretty young, and she still has plenty of time to make a career for herself. Maybe she just hasn't gotten there yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was only I guess this was 10 years ago that this show started. That's crazy. Okay, anyway. All right, so.
So they, I don't think it happened just yet, but like you said, they were driving and they thought about, sticking around and going to eat lunch. And then they saw this police activity and were like, maybe we should just get out of town.
Right.
Fortunately for them, they're not going to get that opportunity to do so.
Right. Junior, meanwhile, is looking distraught and wielding a knife like a psychopath. He seems like he's suicidal in this moment, caused by, maybe not caused by Angie, but as a result of Angie rejecting him. And then he hears his father speak on the radio, and Jim Rennie sure is dramatic. You never can let a good crisis go to waste. That's the motto of politics. Nori has a seizure and starts talking about pink stars. Joe and Angie are stranded inside the dome without their parents. We already mentioned that. That's in my
we're going to be jumping all over the place. Right. That's okay. Because our notes don't line up with each other at all. Unlike when we do scene-by-scene episodes.
Right. The military comes and they shuffle people that are gathered around the dome on the outside away. Angie ends up bumming a cigarette from Barbie, which Junior ends up observing.
Yeah, so Junior sees this, and he gets the wrong idea. Mm-hmm. He thinks they're, sleeping together. They just met.
Right.
Nobody even knows who Barbie is yet. Right, he doesn't live in this town. Mm-hmm. He was trying to get out of Dodge after burying that body.
Yep.
And I'm going to avoid comparing it to the book because there's reasons. And you probably didn't get that far yet, learning what happened between Angie and Barbie in the book. But
no, I'm interested now.
So one thing that I'll just say about the book. So I recently did a rewatch of the show.
Yes.
Then we decided to do this. Then as I was starting to read the book, and now as I'm reading the book, my husband and I are rewatching the episodes together. He's never seen them, so I'm watching them with him while I was taking these notes. And even though I had just done a rewatch maybe a month ago, rewatching it again after getting some distance in the book, I'm like, I'm making all these connections to things that aren't identical to what happened in the book, but I can see that they happen in the show because they're paying homage to things that happen in the book.
Right.
Lots and lots of little details that I totally wouldn't have ever picked up on as being anything. And now I have a different appreciation for knowing, the story of the origin story from the book. So,
I'm interested. What has Adam registered an opinion on the first 6 episodes you guys watched?
He likes it. Yeah. Usually it's hard to get him to watch something with any repetition to do any binging at all, and he's going along with it. So he likes the show.
All right. So Jim and Duke have a conversation at a school. I think it is. I'm pretty sure that's a school. Jim threatens Duke with the propane that he's been stockpiling, and he's basically trying to get more power for himself in this scene. He's basically trying to get him to authorize some measures that Jim wants to implement, and Duke is like, no, that's not happening. And Jim's like...
Oh, I remember that scene.
Okay.
They were... Jim was saying we need to hire some deputies.
Right.
And Sheriff Perkins was very much against this.
Mm-hmm. And... yeah, so basically here we get the idea that something shady is going on, specifically that Duke is involved, Jim is majorly involved. And then we have Barbie and Junior at night getting into it a little bit. Junior kind of looks insane, trying to pick a fight with Barbie for reasons that Barbie doesn't understand at all. But this has very much to do with Angie and his perception that maybe Barbie and Angie are sleeping together.
Yeah, and of course... Barbie has no idea that he's involved in some love triangle.
And if he had any knowledge, he would choose not to be involved in that. And we have Julia coming. She finds out that her husband is missing. I don't know if Barbie has made the connection between who her husband is.
He hasn't made the connection yet.
Yeah. Okay.
So her husband is a doctor, Peter Shumway. He works at this clinic. And so she went to the clinic. I forget, why did she go there? I know Barbie and Julia went to the clinic. I don't remember why. Somebody was hurt. And that's when she finds out her husband's not at the clinic. She thought he was supposed to be working. And they're like, no, he never works on Sundays. And so at this point, she's thinking her husband's having an affair because he's been lying about where he's been at every weekend. But all she knows right now is he's not around. So she's thinking he's probably not in the dome. And we talked about Julia, but we didn't mention her actress. She's played by Rachel Lefevre, which I'm probably pronouncing wrong. She was in the Twilight Saga movies. She was starred in one movie I particularly remember watching that was really good. Of course, timey-wimey, that I'm picking up on it. It was called The Caller. Does that ring any bells to you?
It does. I can't remember what it's about.
It was basically just her. There were a couple other actors that had minor parts in the movie, but mostly we just followed this actress, her character. She moved into an apartment that had like an old telephone, like the kind that was hooked to the wall, like part of the house.
Okay.
And she was getting phone calls from a different time, from the past.
Oh, okay.
From somebody who lived in this apartment in the past.
You know what? You know why I think I know about this? Because I think you've told me about it before.
Maybe.
I don't think I've watched it.
It was a good movie.
I think I'll take a look at that.
Yeah,
for sure.
She was the star of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the town's youth takes advantage of the situation to throw a party. They're throwing a party on the bridge. Joe is walking through this party, and his friend Ben is there.
Ben Drake, played by John Elvis. Ben is...
Which is an excellent name, by the way.
I don't have any information on John Elvis's career.
Yeah, I didn't look into that, but...
Ben is... he's a skateboarder, and we get the impression here that he's friends with Joe, but they're not particularly close. They're basically just know each other from school. But over the next couple days, they're going to become really good friends.
Like the best friends.
Yeah.
Junior happens upon an unconscious Angie and does what any caring person would do. He picks her up and brings her to a bomb shelter and prevents her from leaving.
Yes. Junior kidnaps her, imprisons her in his father's fallout shelter. Couldn't get that sentence out.
Wow. I mean, that was a mouthful. And Julie lets Barbie sleep at her house, which by now I think he's figured out who her husband is.
So she invites him to stay at her home, and it's when he's at the house he sees a picture of them together. And I'm pretty sure that's when it clicks for him. This is the wife of the dude he just buried.
Yes.
Which, we'll learn more about that as we get through this season. But, he didn't know the guy's name. He had only had an alias for him. So he didn't know until seeing that picture that man was Peter Shumway. And of course, immediately he feels guilty that he's befriended this woman staying in her house.
Whose wife he just killed? Or husband she just killed?
She's waiting for her husband to come home, and he knows he's not coming home.
Awkward. Meanwhile, Linda and Duke are out by the dome, and his pacemaker gives out.
Yeah, so... Okay, so anytime someone touches the dome for the first time, it gives them an electric shock.
Yeah.
And then after the first time, that doesn't happen anymore. So when Duke touches it for the first time, it sets off his pacemaker.
Yeah.
Like the electricity goes into his pacemaker and it explodes.
And that's where episode 1 ends.
Right before that, he was about to tell Linda about the whole propane scandal.
Yes.
He was going to let her in on it. And he didn't because he didn't get the chance to. But she knows there was something he was going to tell her. And, his pacemaker fried. He died instantly, of course. And the town is left without a sheriff.
And that is really unfortunate.
And I don't know if we mentioned this somewhere in there. Joe also had a seizure. Did you mention that?
Actually, no, probably not.
Okay. So throughout this episode, both Nori and Joe separately had seizures. And mentioned the pink stars are falling in lines. They actually haven't met each other yet, but they will soon. Do
we have anything else for
I'm just
episode
looking to see
1?
if we covered all the things, because, you're all over the place from where my notes are.
Right.
All of the characters we met in this episode. 2 other characters I want to just mention. One wasn't actually seen in this episode, but he was mentioned in this episode. And I found that interesting to note he was mentioned here. Because I didn't realize this.
Okay.
Even on my last watch through. But on this most recent watch through, I realized they mentioned Sam Verdreau.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay.
They mentioned him right at the beginning. He heard the shot. So, we'll soon learn, what happened between Barbie and Peters. That there was shooting involved. Sam heard the shot and called it into the police station. And that's where Linda and the sheriff were on their way to go investigate when we first saw them. And so he's only mentioned here, Sam Verdreau, but we'll meet him in season 2. He'll be a big character later on.
Yep.
And he's the town drunk. That's pretty much all we know about him so far. And the other character we meet in this episode is Rose Twitchell.
Right. She
runs the Sweetbriar Rose Diner. She's friends with Big Jim. They're pretty close. And this is where Angie's employed, so she's, close with her as well. And Rose is played by Beth Broderick, most well known as Zelena from Sabrina the Teenage Witch. And she was in 5 episodes of Lost. She played Kate's mom.
Right.
And I noticed she did a ton of Christmas movies. This actress has probably at least a dozen Christmas movies in her belt. She
must really like Christmas.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on to episode 2, titled The Fire. We start off with a flashback to Barbie beating up Peter Shumway, who eventually ends up very dead because he tries to shoot Barbie, and Barbie ends up killing him. Meanwhile, Barbie is in Julia's house sleeping, not the same bedroom yet, and he's preoccupied by missing dog tags. And he's asking Julia about it. He's really disturbed about this.
Your notes went a lot more scene by scene than I thought we were going.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was more vague about it, but yeah. So, anyway, in this episode, Duke is down, and he felled by the dome, shorting out his pacemaker. Joe wants to go map the dome. Billy and Dottie is listening to they're both listening to military channels. They know they're under a dome. They keep referencing a dome.
Yeah, so they are the first ones who learn about the dome, and they're keeping this secret for now.
Philip wants to basically say something, but she doesn't want people to be scared just yet. Jim gets a generator going for Rose, which is the character we just talked about. Nori and Co. end up meeting Jim, and Julie heads to the radio station. Angie is still trapped. She's trying to escape. That doesn't work out too well for her. Junior comes home. She tries to rush it up the stairs, but he's got the key. And she ends up screaming a lot, and she's basically just right back where she started. Junior thinks the dome is the reason for why she doesn't love him.
Yeah, he thinks the dome's making her sick.
Yes, and so he's a very deluded, psychopathic character who's irredeemable in my eyes. So, despite whatever the show might try to do, he's an irredeemable jackass. Just want everybody to know that off the bat. Okay, so Linda and Jim, they go to the morgue with Lester Coggins.
Yeah, so Lester Coggins is the Reverend, and he's also the Undertaker of the town. He handles both of those responsibilities. And we also quickly learn that he's involved in whatever this propane business is as well.
And not only that, but he's, basically taking from his own supply, which is a big drug dealer, no.
Yeah, so he's always high on drugs, involved in something shady, super just creepy character.
Yeah.
And he's played by Ned Bellamy, who was in Sarah Connor Chronicles.
Okay.
The Terminator series there. He was in Shawshank Redemption, another Stephen King adaptation.
Yes.
That was a good one.
Yes, that was a very good one.
And he appeared in the original Saw movie.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I recognize him. I didn't look too deeply into him.
I feel like you see him and you just think of him as this weird, creepy guy. I think he always plays that kind of character.
So Duke is dead at this point, and Jim ends up going to the sheriff's office where Linda finds him. He's apparently digging up the will, but I think he's not. He's doing more than that. Linda is basically the sheriff now at this point.
Well, she hasn't been given that title yet, but yeah, she's the one stepping up and saying, we got to do this, we got to do this. Now, in that, we meet 2 other police officers. We meet Officer Freddie Denton, and we meet Officer Paul Randolph. And Paul gives resistance to taking orders from Linda. He's like, who's in charge now? And she's like, does it matter?
Right.
We're cops. Go do your job.
Right, yep.
And he doesn't want to listen to anything she has to say. He's very against her. We also learn that he really likes guns. He thinks the best thing to do is just, gun up.
Right, and then basically take over the town as a tyrannical police force.
Yeah,
basically.
And the other officer I mentioned, Freddie Denton, he's Rusty's brother. So Linda's soon-to-be brother-in-law. And Freddie Denton's played by Joe Knezovich. And Paul
You're a better
Randolph.
person than I.
Paul Randolph is played by Kevin Sizemore, who was in an episode of Timeless.
Yes.
One of, my pet project shows. He also starred in the Fear the Walking Dead miniseries, Flight 462.
Oh, okay. Okay, so Julie ends up going to the radio station and ends up broadcasting throughout the entire town that they are, in fact, under the dome. So she takes matters into her own hands and basically ends up broadcasting the news to the town residents to inform them about what's going on.
Yeah.
Nori, ever the optimist, says it means they're all going to die under the dome. Barbie runs into Nori at a store, and she's shoplifting. And they have a brief conversation. I think this is the first time they're meeting. This particular scene.
Yeah, we're still in the point where not a lot of time has passed. It's the next morning. Characters are just meeting each other. We've met most of the main characters at this point.
Junior ends up stalking Barbie. We see that in the distance. Julia realizes the military doesn't know what this thing is, and so they are not responsible. Barbie goes to the place where he killed Peter and finds the gun that Peter had is empty.
Yeah.
Which means that he basically set up a suicide attempt, death by bookie dealer, I guess.
Yeah.
And he finds his dog tags. Junior ends up finding him there. They end up getting into a fight where Junior ends up getting his ass handed to him. So one of the deputies, you mentioned this. I just had this further down in my notes, but basically he wants to get the guns going and basically take over the town.
Randolph.
Yep. So he's clearly losing it at this point. We have a fire at the Duke's house that was started by Coggins.
Okay, so what's happening with Duke's house?
Yep.
When Big Jim found the will, he said that Duke left the house to Linda. They were very close. Duke didn't have any family. Linda is the closest thing to family to him, so it's her house now. So he sent Coggins there to get any evidence that might be there about their whole propane thing, which we learned in this episode. It was about drugs, right? So go get the evidence, because we know Duke has some paperwork there. Go find it before Linda finds it.
Right.
That's why Coggins was there. But he very haphazardly sets the paperwork on fire, and he's like, I've solved it, and sets the house on fire. It was not intentional. He's just really incompetent.
Right. I don't know what Jim was ever thinking, including this guy on his plans.
Yeah.
Other than perhaps maybe he wasn't this bad before he started doing the drugs. So yeah, the house is on fire. Coggins is in it, and Linda goes in to rescue him.
So Jim heard Coggins in the house.
Yeah.
He knew he was there because he sent him there. He heard him there and proceeds to say, it's a good thing Jim lived alone. Nobody's in the fire.
Right.
Or not Jim, Duke.
Yeah. So he has no interest in...
His plan is to let the Reverend die.
Right.
And pretend he didn't know he was there. But of course, Linda heard him and she rescues him, and, Big Jim's not happy about that.
But Jim ends up saving the day by getting a bulldozer that we saw earlier in the episode. I didn't mention it, but it's... he takes the bulldozer and wrecks the house completely, which, conveniently takes care of all the evidence that he was so concerned about. Junior tries to tell Angie that in the bomb shelter that he tried to kill Barbie. Angie doesn't believe it because
he told him that he did kill Barbie.
Right.
He's like, Barbie's dead.
Yeah. Your boyfriend is dead now.
Similarly, Angie lies to him and says, "Yeah, I slept with him."
Right. So this is in addition to kidnapping a woman, keeping her against her will in a bomb shelter, he's also going for emotional abuse, basically telling her that he killed somebody that Angie cared about, that he didn't really kill, but he's still trying to convince her.
And she doesn't even know him anyway.
Right.
It's this really, horrible two-way lie.
Angie doesn't believe him, and Junior takes this as a victory, as like, ha, that's my Angie. Yeah, okay. So Jim ends up congratulating the town and tries to rally the town together, but Deputy Asshole, whose name is what?
Paul Randolph.
Okay, Paul Randolph. He has the opposite message. Oh, good, you guys managed to, kill a fire.
Yeah, and important to note about the fire, the whole town banded together trying to put out this fire. They don't have any fire trucks. All the fire trucks were at that parade.
Yeah, and I didn't mention that a fire in this situation is very, very bad.
Very bad, right.
Yeah.
They don't know at this point if they're even going to get rain inside the dome.
Yeah.
they don't have any fire trucks, so they all band together with like buckets. They did a bucket brigade to put out this fire, and it was a losing battle. That's when you said Big Jim came and crashing the house down helped them put out the fire. But it was this big moment of, right, like everybody's here, the whole town's here, including Nori's family, the outsiders who are like, wow, our neighbors wouldn't help each other like this.
Right.
And this is also the first time that Nori and Joe see each other, is during this fire brigade. But yeah, Paul is not, he doesn't think that this is good at all. Yeah,
he's basically like, we're all going to die in here. This dome is going to kill us all. He takes a shot at the dome. It rebounds off of the dome and hits the other deputy.
Freddie Denton, and he dies. That's Rusty's brother. Barbie steps in, disarms Paul, so they arrest him.
Which doesn't go unnoticed by Jim Rennie, who notices how quickly he takes down that guy.
Yeah.
And that's basically where that episode ends.
Yeah, and one only other thing in this episode is we were introduced to one character, Truman, the dog.
Right, of course.
Joe finds this dog.
How could I not mention Truman?
His owner was cut in half by the dome.
Oh.
Pretty gruesomely. Half his body was on one side of the dome, half of it was on the other. So Joe finds this dog and takes him. So Joe and also his friend Ben kind of take care of this dog throughout the season.
Is that the same dog that...
No.
No, okay.
It's a different dog.
It's a different dog?
I don't know what actually happened to Truman, but he's in this season.
Okay. And I guess we're moving on to episode 3. Alright, so episode 3 is titled Manhunt, and the episode starts with the kids, Nori and Joe and Ben, watching footage of the deputy being killed because Joe was recording. The town is gathering around the station in a mob, and they're trying to, basically say, hey, this person killed an innocent person, he needs to die or something, be hung. I don't know what they're trying to do exactly. But Jim calms it down and says, hey, look, I'm not going to tolerate frontier justice. Oh, yeah, so, wow, I'm really skipping around in my notes.
Yeah, because we weren't going scene by scene, even though you're trying to really hard.
Yeah. Right.
So we had mentioned Paul. I mentioned that Paul was arrested. It doesn't go very well, though, because Paul manages to trick Linda, who's the one putting him in the cell. He escapes and gets Linda into the cell.
Right.
So that's bad. So we start off with he escapes. He's on the run.
Right.
And that's the manhunt behind this episode. Is they're trying to find Officer Randolph.
Maury ends up meeting Joe and wants, to get some power. Apparently he still has some power.
Yeah, so he's home alone.
Right.
His parents aren't there. His dad's a truck driver. He's away.
Is Kevin McAllister there?
No.
Okay.
But their name is McAllister.
Oh, yeah, what do you know? Huh.
He's Joe McAllister, and he's home alone. That might be intentional, actually, because his name's not McAllister in the book, and neither is Angie's.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Angie, he knows, is under the dome. He's seen her already, but he has no idea where she's at right now.
Right.
We know where she's at, but he thinks she's just off doing her own thing, because she does have her own apartment. He's just like, whatever, at this point. So he's home alone, has a generator, so suddenly he becomes very popular, and all the kids want to go to his house.
And he's not exactly thrilled by this.
No.
I mean, the only person he wants around is Nori.
Right. He's trying to get to know her, and Joe starts bringing other kids, and pretty soon it's a hopping party at Joe's house.
Yeah, I can kind of relate to this. I would be in Joe's situation where, I only want to spend time with this one person, and my best friend, is trying to make a party out of it, which I don't necessarily want. I can totally see myself in this situation back in the same age, honestly. So we end up seeing Junior back at the house with Jim. Jim wants to know where was he, and we learn here that, Jim rather learns that Barbie attacked him, and he's basically Junior's like, oh yeah, that Barbie, he's a psycho. Well, that's the kettle calling the kettle black. But Jim is not impressed. He's like, you're still hiding under your mother's skirt after all these years of her being dead, basically. But yeah, he basically feels like this is an opportunity for Big Jim to rule the town, gain some power, and he thinks this will also create opportunities for Junior as well. But at the same time, he needs Junior to basically play his part. And he doesn't feel like Junior's doing that, necessarily. Angie finds a working radio in the bomb shelter, and she ends up trying to hide it from Junior. She suggests to Junior that he should go under the dome, under the tunnels, like the factory.
Yeah, there's a cement factory, and it's what's the word? It's shut down.
Right. Condemned.
Condemned, that's the word.
Yeah.
But Angie reminds him that they used to go there all the time, and they would sneak under these tunnels, and they'd take the tunnels all the way to Westlake. So she suggests, well, maybe you can go under the dome, right? Through these tunnels.
Under the dome.
Yeah. So he thinks that's a great idea, and because she suggests, well, maybe the dome is making me sick, so let's find a way out, right?
And she's kind of trying to play nice here at the same time, kind of trying to trying to create an advantage for herself.
Right.
Jim ends up finding Linda locked up and basically starts a search party. She goes off on her own to do her own thing.
Yeah, she's going to search for Randolph as a cop. She's like, I'm going to go find him. And Jim says, well, no, let's wait. Let's make a search party. It's my job to form a search party as, the elected official here. And she's like, I don't care what you do.
Right. I'm going to go do my own thing. I'm going to do my job. I don't care what you have to say. So we end up getting introduced to Dinsmore at, what was the woman's name? Rose's. Yeah, the Rose's restaurant. Dinsmore is played by Leon Ripley. He was in the original Quantum Leap in the episode Freedom. He was a sheriff in that episode who had a hard-on for the main character. He was also in Star Trek The Next Generation. He was in the season finale. He was one of the people that Data ended up thawing in the neutral zone. He was also in 11/22/63, which was another Stephen King adaptation.
And I liked that one. That was a pretty good one. That was a Hulu original.
Yeah, that was with James Franco, whose name right now is kind of shit because of some allegations against him. But in general, he was pretty decent in that series.
He was also in a show called Alcatraz, which was short-lived, but that was a cool show. Another timey-wimey one that starred Jorge Garcia from Lost.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
So he was in that with him. He was also in Saving Grace and Deadwood. So big career, this gentleman. And we also meet another farmer named Roger. Those are the two speaking parts of the search party that we gather. So Jim's search party consisted of Roger and Ollie Dinsmore. Ollie Dinsmore becomes a bigger character that we'll see throughout the season. And he also recruits Barbie.
Right.
He's like, you, come with us, you're helping.
And it's funny, I think he didn't initially knew, or maybe he already did. Maybe he already had some kind of clue who this guy was. Yeah,
I think he probably just wanted to get to know who he was because of what Junior said. He's like, well, let me get my eyes on this guy and see what he's all about.
Caroline, meanwhile, is looking for Nori, and she ends up encountering prejudice from Dinsmore, basically being, well, at this point, she's a black lesbian with a white daughter.
Yeah.
So that's a whole bunch of issues going on at once.
Right.
Like,
and
in a very conservative small town.
So, again, I don't want to talk about the book a ton because we're here to talk about the show, but one thing this show does is it removes most of the political and religious kind of connotations that we see in the book. There's a ton of that in the book. In the show, it's pretty limited. Like, this is one of the only instances where we'll get hinted at that, you know, where we see this kind of difference in lifestyle beliefs.
Right.
Which is funny because this lesbian relationship doesn't exist in the book.
No.
The characters, the names, Carolyn and Alice are named after characters in the book, but not these characters.
Gotcha.
In the book, Nori has a dad. That's it.
Okay, so they end up going out and looking for the deputy that's on the run. Barbie ends up pointing out a dummy trail. Jim and Co are about to walk off in one direction. Barbie realizes that's not the direction he was going to go because this guy was former military and he was smart enough to create a dummy trail, so he sends them in the right direction. Eventually, they happen upon the deputy, and one of the Jim's recruits, which one was that got shot in the knee?
Roger.
Yeah, Roger got shot in the knee, and this is getting shot in the knee in this show is kind of like Frum's getting your throat cut. Because it happens multiple times within the course of this series.
You're right.
So Barbie ends up questioning, hey, are we looking to bring this guy in, or are we looking to take him out? Like, basically kill him. And Jim doesn't really answer the question, but he sort of answers the question. He's kind of vague about it, but he leaves a general impression that he's just looking to kill this guy.
Yeah, and what we know about Barbie at this point is we know he's, once upon a time, was a military man.
Correct. Yep.
We're still kind of learning, like, what exactly he was involved with when he killed Peter, but he was originally, you know, military man. That's why Jim's like, you're going to be helpful, right? You've got military history. And that comes up a lot, right?
Yes.
Where he's a very capable person. And he does have these skills, but also, you know, he's been in situations where he's had to kill people.
Right.
For, you know, military reasons. Not
you get the sense that he has regrets about that.
Yes.
That are sometimes explored, but sometimes I don't think that's really explored enough within the show. All right, so Junior ends up going to the tunnels. He's joined by Julie.
Yeah, Julia follows him.
Yes. And he thinks he's found a way out, but he's wrong. The dome is still there. And he ends up discovering Julie behind him. And he gets all menacing. Ooh, you shouldn't have followed him. But then when we come back from commercial break, his attitude is completely different.
Yeah. He's trying to be big and bad.
Right.
But then he's like, oh, it's dangerous down here. And so what happens is he touches the dome under the tunnels, and his flashlight shortens out.
Right.
So now that he doesn't have a flashlight, he's like, I don't know how to get out of here. These tunnels are really like a maze. I don't know how to get back above ground. And it's dangerous down here. Like, this place is condemned for a reason. This could fall down at us at any minute.
Right. It's not a good situation. And they end up, like, struggling to find their way out. They end up bonding. Junior reveals his daddy issues.
He also tells Julia about how Barbie beat him up, which is, you know, news to her, because he lied about his injuries, how he got them.
And yeah, that starts off a little subplot of her starting to suspect Barbie. That actually ends up continuing for a couple episodes. Yeah, so she ends up comforting him, unaware that he is an unredeemable, crazy-ass monster who locks girls in bomb shelters against their will.
Right.
Just, again, bringing that up. You know, he's not a good guy. Anyway, so he ends up putting worms of doubt in her head regarding Barbie, and they eventually end up finding their way out.
Yeah, she basically leads him. They use matches that she has, and I'm not sure why she has matches, because she doesn't smoke. She's got a book of matches on her, and they use the matches to find their way out of the tunnels, and basically she saves Junior's life at this point, because he didn't know what to do. He was just going to sit down and cower. And
you know what's really funny about my notes is that it gets less scene by scene as we go along. I find a better approach to this.
Okay.
But yeah, so anyway.
Let's just close up what I have about her storyline then throughout this episode. So because of this conversation with Junior, she's, you know, suspecting Barbie. She ends up going through his things when she gets home. Remember, he's staying at her house. She goes through his things, and she finds a map with a spot marked on it that says PB. And she doesn't know what that means, but in the next episode, she's gonna follow through with that lead and see what she can learn about Barbie.
And yeah, so Nori is at Joe's house, the party. He's reluctantly there partying. Nori ends up getting hit on by a jerk who you mentioned is...
Okay, so this character's introduced in this episode. His name's Carter Thibodeau.
Which initially I didn't even realize that was also a deputy in a later episode. Yeah. Until you pointed it out to me.
So yeah, he becomes, and it's something I didn't pick up on, like, originally watching this show. And it's something I picked up on after starting to read the book. Because in the book, Carter is a much bigger character. So Carter Thibodeau is played by Andrew Vogel. No relation to Mike Vogel that I could see. That's the one who plays Barbie. What we learned about Carter is he used to date Angie.
Yep.
And he's just not a really great guy.
No.
So he's not just hitting on Angie or on Nori. He's basically like going to force her to go upstairs with him.
Right. And also in the process getting into a fight with Joe, who steps in to basically stop this.
He's trying to charge all of Joe's guests, if you can call them that, to use the electricity. It's not his house. It's not his electricity, but he's charging people to charge their phones.
You know what? If I had actually made that connection, I would have been more satisfied with him getting shot in the knee later in the series. Okay, but anyway, they're charging way too much. There's a short. The power goes out.
Yeah.
In the middle, which ends up saving Joe from having to get into a fight, which he might probably lose.
Right. Everyone ends up leaving except Nori, Joe, and and Ben, who stay behind. And Carolyn comes and finds them. She's been looking for Nori. Nori, throughout this whole episode, told these guys that, you know, she never mentioned her mom. She basically said she's traveling alone.
Yeah, she ended up sidestepping that a lot because, you know, at this point, you know, it's interesting because this is 2013, and I didn't think, I guess these issues aren't as mainstream as they are now, where, you know, there's two moms, two dads, that kind of thing.
She didn't want him to know that about her, but I think ultimately she's just trying to, like, she's being a sultry teenager. And we know that's her character. Like, she gets in trouble a lot. She beat somebody up in the past. Like, we've learned, like, you know, she's got this history. That's why she was going to this place in the first place. But she's, like, saying she's all alone. And she, at one point, mentions her moms. And Joe's like, moms? And she's like, yeah, my moms and my pops. She's trying to, like, hide, you know, her family. I don't know if she's just, like, ashamed of her life, or she just wants to be mysterious,
or she doesn't really want to explain that at this time. I don't know, like in 2013, was this like a more taboo thing than it is now?
I don't know,
because I know right now, like, it's definitely more of an acceptable thing, but I didn't think that far back would be, I mean, in 2013, that it was that big of a deal.
I don't know.
All right,
but yeah, so Carolyn finds them because she heard the explosion of the generator going off and realized this is where all the kids are at, right? Because they're all leaving. So she comes there just in time to see Nori and Joe both have their second seizure at the same time. And it happened because they touched each other. They grabbed each other's hands and both collapsed and had a seizure. And talking about the pink stars again. And
that's pretty much the end of their story for episode 3. Jim and Barbie, meanwhile, are continuing the hunt, and as they talk, they come across the deputy. And I think this is where we learn that Jim ended up playing football as well. He's eventually gunned down by Linda during what's almost a Mexican standoff, but not quite, because it's only Barbie pointing the gun at the deputy, while the deputy points the gun at Dean. Or not Dean, but Jim.
At Jim, right.
Dean would be the actor, not the character.
So yeah, it's Paul and Jim and Barbie, and then Linda, who, remember, she was off on her own, happens upon them.
Right.
And she takes
very fortunate.
She takes down Paul. And you mentioned the football thing. This is where Big Jim tells Barbie, he opens up to Barbie. Like, they're kind of friendly at this point. And, you know, he was telling the story of why he's called Big Jim, and it was this whole story about, like, in high school, and he played football, and people teased him, and they called him Big Jim, like, in a teasing way, because he wasn't big. He was the little guy, and I don't know the whole story. I don't remember, but basically he overcome everything and became a hero, and then people called him Big Jim with respect after that.
Well, you know, it's funny, because take this story with a grain of salt, because, you know, see who it's coming from. Who has kind of a hero complex and a narcissistic personality.
Not season 2, at the end of this season, we'll actually get another person's kind of perspective on Jim as a teenager. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes. All right, so the manhunt is over. The deputy is dead. They end up going to bring the body to Lester, and he ends up asking Lester if he's clean, and he is. Jim apologizes to Linda for questioning her abilities to do her job, because earlier he had done that, and says, hey, there's a new sheriff in town, literally.
Yeah, so this is when he kind of officially names Linda the sheriff. Interesting to note, though, that your other officers are dead. She's kind of the only one left.
Right. Well, now that there's nobody else, I think you're the one for the job.
Yeah.
Okay, so... yeah, Jim and Barbie end up meeting with Julia and Junior, which is kind of awkward. Julia questions Barbie. Oh, we already got into that, so yeah, we don't have to talk about that anymore. But, all right, so Junior and Jim have a scene where he's like, hey, why were you hanging out with Barbie? And Jim is basically like, you don't need to know. Drink your milk while I drink my alcohol, son. He's very condescending here. And, yeah. So, you know, we get the feeling throughout these 3 episodes that their relationship is not super great. And that it's kind of abusive, which could explain some of Junior's behavior, but definitely doesn't excuse his actions for sure.
We keep getting this reference, and I feel like it was in this scene or somewhere in this episode that, or maybe it didn't happen yet, but we get these references where, I mean, we did learn about the dead mother in this episode, right? We're told she's been dead for 9 years, and we learn a lot more about that throughout the series. But in this season, we learn more about how she supposedly died. Big Jim kind of keeps making references that Junior's starting to remind him of his mother, right? And they're saying that in a negative way, like, something's wrong with you, you remind me of your mother. But really, like, he seems to be an awful lot like Big Jim.
Right.
I think he's got the worst qualities of both of his parents.
Yes.
But more so his father, because his father's a psychopath. He's a psychopath.
He absolutely is.
His father knows he's a psychopath, but doesn't realize he himself is a psychopath.
Right. There's not a whole lot of self-awareness with the character of Jim, that's for damn sure. But the apple definitely doesn't fall far from the tree.
Yeah.
That's pretty obvious. That's it for episode 3. Unless you have more to say there.
Nope, we've covered all my notes.
All right. Moving on to episode 4, Outbreak. We have an awkward morning between Barbie and Julie. Basically, Julie is starting to... I think she ends up finding a map.
Yeah, she found the map. I mentioned that in the last episode. Yep. So she follows the map. She goes to where the PB was marked on the map, and it led her to Phil Bushy.
Right.
Who she knows because she's been working with him at the radio station making all these announcements. And she didn't know that's where she was at, but she finds her husband's car there. And somebody tells her that's Phil's place. And she's like, Phil, why do you have Peter's car? And he says, Peter sold me his car.
Right.
So we're learning of this connection between Peter and Phil. And she doesn't really understand what her husband has to do with anything, but she knows that Barbie lied to her because Barbie had told her he doesn't know anybody in town. He was literally passing through. He doesn't know a soul here. But now we know he knows Phil.
Right.
And she wants to know what the heck is up with him knowing Phil and how this has anything to do with her husband. And all she knows is Barbie's lied to her, and she's really upset about that.
Yes. Meanwhile, the military is packing up to leave. The Dome residents are not happy about this. Coggins is acting like a crazy person, basically talking like he's a preacher. Julie uses the ruckus to give Barbie the slip. We already basically covered that. She's going to go see Phil. Angie, meanwhile, continues to play nice with Junior, and he brings her a gift, basically a dress. And you know what? We didn't even cover that. Basically, in the previous episode, she ended up stealing a pair of scissors from a first aid kit. That was I think that was the last episode.
I don't know when that happened. That might not.
Oh wait, no, what? This is happening now.
Okay.
Okay, so she uses that moment to try and stab Junior, and that doesn't end up working out. Angie ends up getting chained back up. Angie begs for him to let her out, but he will not do so. Convinced that she is sick because of the Dome, because she doesn't love him. And that's the only reason that she could have not to love him.
Yeah.
Okay, so Carolyn and Alice bring Joe and Nori to the hospital to investigate their seizures. Joe notices Junior and asks, "Hey, where's Angie? Have you seen her recently?"
Yeah, because they're dating, remember. Right. As far as anybody knows, they're a couple.
Junior says, "Oh yeah, I saw a couple of days ago." And Joe's like, "Oh, well, where?" And he's like, "Well, I don't know, around. Anything else, little man?" Basically being very condescending.
Yeah.
Linda is brought in, and it's soon revealed that there's some kind of infection going on.
Yeah, so a lot of people are getting sick. The hospital's filling up with patients, and we learned already there's no doctors.
Right, just nurses.
The doctor who's supposed to be here is Julia's husband. This is a small town. It's just a clinic. It's not a full hospital. So we do meet in this episode 2 nurses. We meet Nurse Adams, played by Crystal Martinez, and we meet Nurse Beth, played by Quincy Villanueva. And the two of them, along with a handful of orderlies, and there is an ambulance driver, they're running the clinic. There's not a single doctor under the dome. So it's pretty bad that now there's some kind of epidemic happening. And
it's lucky that Alice is there because she's quickly recruited to help out in this situation.
So, this is where we learn, and I mentioned this earlier in our discussion, she's a psychiatrist or a psychologist, one of those.
You kind of like said halfway.
She's one of those. I forget which one. But she has medical training. So she kind of steps up, like she's a doctor, but she's not a medical doctor, but she has medical training. Mm-hmm. So she is recruited to like, okay, you're our doctor now.
Right.
And she quickly identifies this as meningitis. Mm-hmm. She says, we have a meningitis epidemic.
You know what? It's funny because I completely missed that. Like, I was like, hey, wait, did we ever resolve what this even was? Because, like, next thing you know, we brought in antibiotics, problem cured. But what was actually going on here? And then when I'm watching, I'm like, oh, they mentioned it very early in the episode.
Yeah,
this is meningitis.
She recognized it as meningitis, and her family's been vaccinated because they went on a trip to Africa.
Right.
Cool for them. Barbie was vaccinated in the military. Yep. Junior was vaccinated when he went to college. So we had a handful of characters who are immune. But most of this town has never been
vaccinated?
Never been vaccinated. I was somehow trying to mix that with evacuated. I don't know why. They haven't been vaccinated for meningitis. So there's a lot of people sick. I think at one point they said something like 30 people have come down with meningitis.
That is a lot.
Yeah.
Barbie ends up coming in, and Julie, who's brought Phil in, he collapsed when she went to
Right, while she was talking to him, he collapsed.
He tries to play dumb, but is confronted with the map, and Barbie gets all pissed. Oh, you went through my things? And like, that's kind of interesting little bit of misdirected anger there. Like, hey, dude, you killed her husband. But anyway, Barbie stonewalls, and Alice intercepts Julia for somehow, some way. Barbie ends up like getting past with this stuff that he's brought. Junior is recruited to keep everyone in the clinic, and he does this by taking a gun and holding it on everyone while standing at the door and not letting everybody leave. That's pretty much par for the course for his character.
So Big Jim had put him in charge of the quarantine. They didn't really... So here's the problem. Junior didn't tell all these people in the hospital, like, okay, it's meningitis. It's dangerous if you leave. You can spread it. That's why we're going to quarantine the hospital. He was just like, nobody leaves, and like holding on them.
Right.
Without really explaining why.
Right, yeah. So anyway, Angie, meanwhile, has been knocked unconscious. She's in a bad situation because there's a water leak, which is filling up the bomb shelter.
In her trying to escape, she managed to break a pipe.
Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Barbie and Jim go to the pharmacy. Basically, the doctors and nurses that are there are pinning their hopes on getting some antibiotics from the pharmacy.
Which we'd already heard the pharmacy's closed.
Right. But the pharmacy was broken into and everything was taken.
Yeah, it's been completely ransacked.
It turns out that Coggins is the culprit. He's gone nuts and talking about the dome's plans, and he's basically setting the medications on fire.
Yeah. His whole thing is it's God's plan, and we shouldn't play God by trying to cure people with medicine. That's not God's will. So I'm going to get rid of the medicine so the people who are supposed to die can die.
Right. Well, gee, that's a great plan. Okay, so Linda ends up rooming with her third grade teacher. They end up bonding until she ends up dying. That's, It
was a little more complicated than that. The character is Mrs. Moore, and she's played by Celia Weston. And as you already told us, she dies, so she's not in any other episodes. But this actress, she's a pretty good actress. She was in a 2022 TV series called Echoes.
Echoes, okay.
That was a pretty interesting series about two twin sisters who took each other's places, and then one of them goes missing. She appeared in American Horror Story Freak Show. And she was in The Village. Remember that one?
Yes, The Village, yeah. The movie? M. Night Shyamalan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, she's Linda's former teacher. She also was Junior's teacher, she mentioned. And she ended up she's the one who told Linda. So this is why this is important. You know, if you had told me, because Linda was asleep during this whole event. And we'll get to what happens with Junior, but she ends up telling Linda, if you had told me a year ago that Junior Rennie holding a gun would have been reassuring, I never would have believed it. But I would have said the same thing about you a few years ago, because you were a pretty rough student too. So it's this Mrs. Moore who convinces Linda that Junior's swell.
Oh, okay.
And that becomes important.
So she's responsible for putting that crazy person on the street with a gun.
And then, so, as you said, they're out looking for antibiotics. The hospital only has one more dose. And Linda and Mrs. Moore are both like, need it now. And Mrs. Moore says, give it to Linda. I'll wait for the next one to come, even though she knew she couldn't make it. So she sacrificed herself for Linda to let Linda live. Sweet deal. Yeah. So yeah, she died, but there was a lot of drama in there.
Yeah, I just decided to skip all over that in my notes. All right, so people are starting to become desperate. Junior ends up firing a gun to keep everybody in line, scaring them in line. Linda happens upon this and, like, basically is taken aback by Junior's actions. He then decides to take a different tack and give a pretty good speech about how, you know, they're all in this together.
Yeah.
Maybe at this point, I mean, if they had started off by saying, hey, look, you guys have meningitis. Just sit tight, we're getting antibiotics so we don't infect the rest of the town.
Yeah.
If they had started with that...
it might have gone a little smoother.
Gone a little bit different. So he ends up putting the gun down and walking away from the door, and everybody decides to just listen to Junior at this point.
Yeah, he basically convinces everybody, hey, we're a town, we're a community, we work together. Ollie Dinsmore's there. He reminds us of how, you know, him and his wife were so helpful when Junior's mom died, and we're this great community, and we all love each other.
Kumbaya. Take our hands together. Dance around in a circle. Anyway, Julie, meanwhile, has gotten out of the hospital. She's gone to the cabin.
Yeah, so Phil had told, Junior mentioned the cabin that he had seen Barbie at. So she's going to this cabin to find out what the heck's going on with Barbie and Phil and her husband.
She eventually discovers information that we don't reveal at this point, and she ends up and basically fainting. I wasn't sure at this point if it was the disease or the fact that she was shocked by the information she got.
I mean, I think it was both, but yeah, she has meningitis.
Right.
She needs to be in that quarantine and getting the antibiotics.
So Junior really does, all in all, a pretty poor job here, but he's a hero.
He impressed Linda.
Yes.
The side of it she saw was impressive. In addition to Mrs. Moore's testimony there.
Nori and Joe decide to test a theory about touching. Basically, they take hands, they record it at the same time.
Right, they're recording it on their phone. And they said, last time we had a seizure was when we touched each other. So let's do that again. They hold hands.
And at first, nothing happens, and then they collapse.
They have a seizure. They talk about the stars. And in this video, he doesn't remember doing this, but Joe sits up and shushes himself, basically telling himself through the video not to tell anybody about this. Yep. Keep this a secret. And it was kind of creepy.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Jim and Barbie come back with the antibiotics and I think I said that wrong. Jim ends up asking Junior, hey, were there any problems? And Junior's all like, no problems at all. Barbie ends up interrogating Philip, gets a little rough with him, and tries to find out where Julia is and what she knows about the whole Peter situation. And basically, she knows that Peter skipped town and is gone.
Right, that's what everybody thinks, except Barbie.
Right.
We learned through this that there was a debt, right? We learned that Barbie is collecting debt.
Yes.
He's
a debt collector
for a bookie. And the reason that he had Phil on his map was because Phil was somebody he was collecting debt from. And I don't know if it was this scene or one later, we also learned that the reason he has Peter's car is because Peter sold him the car to get money to help pay the debt. But Phil is the one who told Peter, why don't you just get out of Dodge? So that's what he thinks that's what happened. He thinks Peter took his advice.
So yeah, Philip is basically like, yeah, you're not getting your money back, sorry. And I'm pretty sure that Barbie is aware of that at this point.
But it's pretty good cover for Barbie.
Yeah.
If everybody thinks this guy just isn't here.
Right. Barbie asks Junior about Julia, and Julia is not very cooperative because he's still, indulging in this little rivalry that he's got going on. And basically Barbie's like, look, if you don't help me here, she's gonna die. And that's gonna be on you because this happened on your watch.
Right, she left while you were supposed to be quarantined in the hospital.
And after that conversation, Junior ends up getting praised for being a hero from Linda to his dad. And his dad smiles and suggests a career in law enforcement.
Yeah, and
good God, these people have no judgment.
Linda, during this episode, officially makes Junior a deputy.
Yep. So Barbie ends up going to the cabin, finding Julia, bringing her back to the hospital. Her life is saved.
So she can get her antibiotics. And then they have a conversation
right
about it all. And he admits that he was working for a bookie, but he lies and says Peter never showed up for their appointment.
Right. Doesn't admit to actually killing the guy.
Yeah. So, and then we learn what those papers were all about. She found evidence that
the house was foreclosed on.
Yeah, they had no money.
Yeah.
He had spent all their money, and she doesn't believe this because she's like, he never gambled, and Barbie was like, well, yeah, here's played a voice message of him trying to meet up, and but then he was like, oh yeah, he never showed up, so he must have skipped town.
Right.
So came clean as far as how the fact that he's involved with these people and wasn't just passing through town, but obviously doesn't admit to killing him.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty hard... I don't know. Is he, like, doing this just to cover for himself, or is he also doing it out of kindness to Julia? To not let her know that her husband is dead?
Well,
is this self-interest?
Probably.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah. But, I mean, it doesn't matter because just finding out that she lied to him about this, she got pretty pissed. She kicked him out of the house.
Yes,
she said, when I get home, you better be gone.
So even not admitting to killing her husband still doesn't save him.
Right. And it was because he lied, and I get that.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a pretty legitimate reason to not have this guy in your life at this point. All right, so Joe ends up offering Nori and her mother's a place to stay at his house because, everybody's gone except for Angie, even though Angie hasn't been around. Linda ends up recruiting Junior to be a deputy. I have to say this. Linda has the worst judgment ever. Like, she trusts Big Jim, she trusts Junior. She does not have very good judgment in this course of the series.
She believes people are good. She has some innocence about her.
Yeah. And fortunately or unfortunately, she's never going to learn otherwise, really. She's never going to become old and cynical like myself.
Also, before they leave the hospital, this is where we find out Alice is low on insulin.
Yes.
And
I forgot to mention that.
Carolyn was going to take the insulin from the hospital, but Alice was like, no, I'm fine. I don't need any more. I'm okay. Don't steal.
Yeah, that's not going to hold out too much longer.
Yeah.
Jim ends up going home and finds Coggins lurking in the shadows. He's returning his share of the profits of their illegal venture, and he's trying to repent. And yeah, so it's very, very clear at this point that Coggins is becoming a big problem.
Right, and I think this is where he first kind of mentions, like, maybe we should tell everybody and confess our sins. Of course, Big Jim doesn't like to hear that.
Right, of course not. And I'm surprised he didn't just shoot him right then and there. But he goes into the house. He ends up hearing Angie screaming down in the bomb shelter.
Right, because remember, she's like got a flood happening. Yeah, she's about to drown.
Yeah, Junior, your pet, is about to die, drowning to death. But anyway, he ends up going to investigate, finds her in the shelter, and is basically dumbfounded by what he sees. And that's where episode 4 ends.
Yes.
Anything else that you have to say about episode 4?
Nope. Moving on.
All right. Episode 5, Blue on Blue. All the other titles are pretty self-explanatory, except for this one. I don't quite get what Blue on Blue is referring to in this episode.
Well, blue is police.
Okay, yes.
I'm looking to see which episode this is.
That's the bomb shelter. The place is going to be bombed episode.
Yeah, I don't know.
No? You have no clue?
I don't know.
All right. Nori and Joe, in the morning, end up discovering monarch butterflies on the dome. And Nori says that maybe the dome is trying to tell them that when the dome comes down, they'll all become something new, which is a very interesting sentence.
That's some foreshadowing right there that I didn't realize they gave us.
Yes, I thought that would, like, season 3 totally out of the blue.
Right.
But maybe it's just they took...
really weird way to get there?
Yeah, perhaps. Jim ends up entering the bombshell again. She's been sleeping. How long...
So it's the morning.
Right, okay.
So apparently he turned off the water. So we fixed that problem.
And then just left her there without talking.
And, she's like, where have you been? It's been all night.
Right. And at first I'm like, I have a big problem with this. Like, okay, so finds her, leaves, and then doesn't talk to her. But apparently she has the same problem I do.
Yeah, so he must have been like, I'll be back, and then took the whole night to come back.
So he after learning the story, about Junior and how she ended up there, he basically decides, you know what, I have to think about this, and then walks away.
Yeah, he leaves her there. So she thinks she's saved because somebody found her.
Yeah.
Not exactly.
Not so much, because Jim is the one who found her, and he's probably thinking, maybe I could just kill her. And, yeah. I'm sure that's what he's thinking. Coggins ends up showing up, and he's especially annoyed by his presence, most likely because he doesn't want him to hear about Angie down there in the bomb shelter. And he has a warning for Jim. He's picking up radio signals in his,
he's hearing things through his hearing aid, but he thinks he's hearing the voice of God.
Right.
And he's hearing the word Moab, which is, he thinks is something biblical, and it's about like the end of times or whatever he's spewing on about. We'll quickly learn, no, he's picking up sounds from the government on the outside of the dome that his hearing aids intercepting. But yeah, this is where he's really like, I want to tell the town, you know, about what we're doing. We have to confess. It's the only way our souls are going to be saved. And you know, we have to do it now because Moab, whatever.
And yeah, Big Jim doesn't want to hear it.
Yeah.
And goes into the house. We end up finding Barbie sleeping in his car near... You have something to say?
I was just going to say, when Jim goes in the house, he talks to Junior.
Oh, yes.
And Junior was like, I'm going to go get supplies from the shelter. And he doesn't want to admit to Junior that he knows about Angie, but he's just like, no, I'm telling you, you have to listen to me. And right now, he wants Junior to go recruit some of his friends because they need more deputies.
Right. That's specifically in reaction to the news that the military is nearby, which is something that we didn't actually talk about yet.
Okay.
So that's skipping ahead a little bit. Basically, the military is back, and they're bringing busloads of people here. Nori recognizes this as a visitor day, and then we have that scene with Junior seeing his father in the morning, dressed in his new uniform, and this is when basically his Jim says, "Hey, recruit more deputies to handle the situation," and he's like, "Oh yeah." He starts to argue, and he's like, "When I tell you to do something, what do you do?" And Junior goes to argue a little bit more, and then Jim's like, "No!" And it's just such a goofy delivery.
And it was all because he didn't want Junior going to talk to Angie.
Right.
And he also didn't want to admit that he knew about Angie. So this is the really only reference we get to their recruiting more deputies. And one of these deputies, which, you know, you've mentioned, he plays some more of a role in this season, is Carter, the guy we already met that used to date Angie, who we know is not a great guy, so he's not a great deputy to have either. Right. This poor police department. We'll also see in the crowd two other of his friends that get recruited, and I don't think either of these people actually have any lines ever in the season, but those are Dell, played by Al Vincent, and this is according to IMDb, and Georgia, played by Arlene Martin. They're both recruited as deputies, and Georgia's actually a character from the book. I don't think Dell's the name of anybody, but in the book, it's, you know, this whole group of Junior's friends that become deputies. Gotcha.
Linda at the Dome ends up recruiting Barbie to keep people from touching the barrier, because if you touch the barrier with electronics, bad things happen.
Yeah. And then the second after saying that, she sees Rusty and she goes and touches the dome, starts kissing him through the dome. Right. Not setting a very good example.
Nope. Oh yeah, so a little bit of a damper on the fact that she's seeing Rusty is the fact that she has to tell her fiance that her brother, which was the deputy.
His brother.
Yes, his brother is dead.
Yeah.
And she eventually finds a way to tell him. At the radio station, the military is broadcasting random numbers that we don't, nobody knows what it means. Nori ends up seeing a dude holding up a sign. She doesn't recognize him. Holding up a sign saying, "Hey, Nori." Yeah. Basically.
Because remember, they can't hear each other. Right. So what we have now is all of our residents and all of their family and friends are on the outside, and they're all trying to communicate with each other with signs, and some of them have tablets. We've got an advertisement here happening for whatever that brand tablet was. They kept showing it. And Dodie and her mother, for example, they were communicating with sign language.
Right. Now, does that mean that Dodie's mother is deaf?
It tells me somebody in their family must be, that they both know sign language, but we never really get more on that. Dodie's mother, played by Ellen Rice.
Yes.
And a lot of people are there. Andrea's son is there, played by Ed Ricker. And we actually have a newscaster broadcasting the whole event, and that is Jeff Glor playing himself. He's an actual
actual newscaster?
Yeah.
So yeah, the person that Nori is seeing is Nori's dad.
Yeah.
And
her dad Michael. So yeah, he tells her through these paperworks, I'm your dad, Michael, I'm your dad.
Right.
And this is characters played by Gary Weeks. And Nori gets really upset by this because she's been told by her mothers that she came from an anonymous sperm donor. She doesn't know that she has a dad that they know about, like someone they know who it is. And she's even gone as far as asking, like, I want to track down my father. And they were like, oh, there's no records, it's sealed, we can't investigate this.
And basically, when Caroline and Alice show up, Nori realizes that she's been lied to. She ends up running off. And
she's like, I hate all of you because you lied to me. And he's showing her pictures of, like, him and her mother, Alice, together. Like, they were actually dating. There was no sperm donoring involved.
Right. So Coggins is also there. He's doing his sinner's routine. He's acting like a crazy person. And Jim increasingly realizes that he has a big problem, which he should have already realized at this point. But Julie, meanwhile, is looking for Peter. She talks to Barbie and he tries to apologize. And he says, you're right. You shouldn't have done this. But at the same time, I can't blame you for my husband's bad mistakes.
Yeah.
If you want to make this up to me, keep an eye out for my husband, which we all know is not going to happen.
But she does spot somebody she recognizes on the other side of the dome.
It ends up being her sister.
Her sister-in-law. Peter's sister.
Sister-in-law.
Yeah, it's Peter's sister. And she has come with a letter that she received from Peter in the mail. And the letter basically says, I'm sorry, tell Julia I said goodbye.
It's basically a Dear John letter. It's
a suicide letter.
Right, yeah.
But all take it as he skipped town. So it fits Barbie's, it fits his alibi here, right? That Peter skipped town very well. And everybody thinks he just left them to start a new life, to escape, these people he owes money to.
The military eventually ends up shuffling the family away. Dodie is recruited by Barbie to read lips because he saw the sign language conversation.
Right.
Barbie uses his former unit's reputation to learn from another soldier.
Yeah, he goes up to this young soldier, played by Rashim Shabazz. It's a fun name.
It is.
And he shows him this little medallion. It's a jackrabbit medal, and he says apparently his unit or whatever was kind of infamous, and something big happened with them, and this soldier instantly, as soon as he sees that, is willing to communicate with Barbie and tell him stuff that he's not supposed to communicate with anybody inside the dome.
Right. Basically he ends up saying that they're being told that they're probably not coming back here.
Something big is happening. The soldier doesn't even know what, but this is the last time we're going to be here. We're leaving, and as soon as the families leave, we're going to, and we're not coming back.
And between information from the soldier and what Dodie ends up telling him, they realize
he was hearing Coggins.
Right.
He was hearing what Coggins was saying.
He ends up realizing that the army or whoever is going to end up bombing the dome.
Right, because Moab isn't some biblical thing. It means mother of all bombs. And so he's like, they're going to bomb us. And Julia, who heard all those numbers on the radio transmissions they were intercepting, figures out what time it's going to happen at 1:15 this afternoon.
Basically 3 hours from this current time.
Yeah, so they piece it all together and realize the military is going to bomb the dome trying to break it, because these butterflies is proof that the dome is having ecological impacts. They're not going to let that happen, so they're going to bomb the dome to make it fall. And they don't care that that's going to kill everybody inside. And they didn't even warn them. They're keeping it completely on the wraps. They don't want anybody to know that the place is going to get bombed, and if it's successful, you all die.
There's also hints that there's some political implications going on here with other countries that think that this is like some kind of weapon that they're trying to use. So that plays a factor in their decision to try to blow this thing up. So in reaction to this, they decide to evacuate everyone to the old factories.
Yeah, to the tunnels under the cement factory where we had earlier seen Junior and Julia.
And Jim decides to go release Angie because what the hell, they're going to die anyway.
Yeah, he says, like, oh, this way you can go die a free woman. And she doesn't know what that means. She doesn't know what's going on. She doesn't know about this plan. So she leaves. She runs to her parents' house looking for Joe, but he's not there. Nobody's around. But Junior is there waiting for her.
Yes, because Junior got wind of the fact that, and we hear some of Adam walking around up there. Probably some dogs as well. But, yeah, Junior gets wind of the fact that Jim released Angie, and he goes and looks for her and finds her at this place, Joe's old house, or Joe's and Angie's house, not just Joe's house. But
Angie doesn't live there.
Yeah, not currently.
It's her parents' house.
Well, yeah. Oh, really? I thought Angie lived there as well.
No, she moved out.
Oh, okay. I missed that little detail.
Yeah, that's mentioned a few times.
Oh, okay. Well, I missed the little details sometimes. So, yeah, he eventually discovers her there. She finds out what's going on, and she decides to comfort him.
Yeah, and basically, like, they're going to die.
Right.
Like, we're going to just sit here and die in each other's arms because the bomb's going off in 5 minutes. And there's a bunch of characters that didn't make it to the tunnels.
Yeah, Linda, for some reason, I'm not even really clear on what Linda's doing.
So Linda, she goes to some place, I think it was up in the radio tower. It was it had some significance to her and Rusty. And like their initials were carved in the railing, and I think she was just she wanted to die like in some place that was important. So she doesn't think the tunnels are going to save them. So she went here to die. This was her where she wants to die at. And Joe is looking for Angie. So he didn't go to the tunnels because he's running around looking for Angie. Hasn't seen her in a few days. Doesn't know where she's at. He's literally just running down the streets calling her name. Nori's with him to help him. Nori's moms are in the tunnels and they want to go look for Nori, but Carter stops them. The new deputy, Carter.
Yeah.
He won't let them leave, which, good. Don't let people leave to go look for people who aren't here yet. That's not helpful. But Barbie and Julia hear that the kids aren't here, and they leave to go find them.
Right.
So Barbie and Julia are looking for Joe and Nori. Nori's looking for Angie. Angie is with Junior with a gun in his hand. And like you said, Linda, she's off on her own, doing her own thing.
And so Nori and Joe realize that their time is up, that they're not going to find Angie.
Yeah, and in the tunnels, everyone else is there.
Yeah, there's some decent character beats in these scenes.
Phil and Dodie have this precious moment. They're dancing together. He's got music playing. Of course, he's the DJ, and he's playing some classical music to calm everybody down. Right before the bomb, he plays what's the name of the song? Like it's the end of the world.
Yeah, that's his playlist that he put on.
And him and Dodie are dancing, and they make this, like, one of them says, like, oh, can I tell you something? And you think they're going to, admit that they're in love, and they're like, I hate you. And the other one's like, I hate you too.
It's adorbs. So anyway, and like Philip gets his, or Phil ends up getting his something back from Barbie that he lost in a bet. Yeah,
right. Barbie had one of the things he had collected, for debt collection was Phil's grandfather's watch, which I honestly don't think is worth that much. That's what I do. I sell things. So he gave him his watch back, and they think they're gonna die, right? They all have very little faith that this plan of being underground is gonna help them. Remember, this place is condemned because it was gonna fall down. So a bomb going off is probably gonna make the whole place fall on you. They just didn't have a better option of where to go.
Right.
So nobody really thinks this is gonna work. They all think they're dying. But he was like, here's your grandfather's watch back. I know it had sentimental value to you. And Barbie's like, I'm done with that career. Like, I don't care.
So Joe and Nori decide to kiss because they think they're about to die. Yeah. The bomb hits. They don't die. And I gotta say, none of my first kisses have ever been quite that exciting.
Yeah, the bomb goes off and literally nothing happens.
Right, they don't even seize, which is something that Joe points out, but Nori's a little bit more like, hey, we also didn't die.
Right. Nothing happens inside the dome. We get to see outside the dome, and the side of the outside of the dome where the bomb hit, completely fried.
Now, I'm a little, unless they're like in other parts of the dome, looking in different spots, like later on, like all that stuff seems to grow back.
Yeah, so it only hit like one side of
one
the
section.
Dome. They didn't hit the top of the dome. They came in from the side. So I think everything on that side of the dome is fried, and everything on the other side of the dome is okay. Because remember, the dome's like 10 miles.
Right. Yeah.
And because it didn't penetrate the dome, it all kind of stayed. It ricocheted to that side of it, you know.
Yeah. So they're all still alive. Eventually, Coggins ends up finding Jim. And Coggins says, the dome saved us. You need to repent. This town is no longer yours. Blah, 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 blah. And he's going to basically tell on him to the town. And Jim, at this point, decides to kill him by just gently pushing his head
his head against the dome, and
which caused
hearing aid goes
and he dies a gruesome death.
Yeah, and there's this blood trail on the dome, and of course, you know, he made sure nobody's around to see this, and it's perfectly plausible because we've seen people die when they go near the dome with electronics.
And that would be the end of episode 5. Alright, so episode 6, the last of the ones that we're covering for today, The Endless Thirst. Okay, so this episode is insane. It seems to just blow right through plot points that should be like season long. Like, you know, we have a water crisis. No, well, we resolved the water crisis. It seems like that should be an issue that's running throughout the series. Those type of things.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the critics of the series was Stephen King himself. You know, when the show was on the air, he was an executive producer, so he was defending the show. He didn't particularly care about the changes, but in the years since, he's had a very different take on this series. And one of the things he said, and his only real complaint that I saw, was that, you know, like inside the dome, people should be suffering more. Like the issues like the water crisis should be series long.
Right.
And I think that's one of my criticisms of the series. These things that they blow through in a single episode should be ongoing.
Right. Things, you know, that we learn and we deal with, and then they never mention them again. Like even the whole propane thing. Like, we're like, okay, yeah, we've got propane, so we're safe. We have electricity, yay.
Right.
And they just, like, eventually forget about it.
I mean, it does actually become an issue. Especially after these batches of episodes, and actually I think even during this one.
Right, but I'm saying eventually they move on.
Or how about the fact that they introduced Nori's father and they just completely dropped that?
We never touched that again at all.
Yeah. So this series just kind of blows straight through things and never returns to some of these points.
Part of that is coming from an adaptation of a Stephen King book. There's a billion details in a Stephen King book, right? And I don't know all of which ones are part of the book that they're trying to include and which ones aren't, because I'm not done with the book yet. But a lot of it, you know, you see like, oh, they're trying to include these little things.
Right.
And you can't include everything. And if you try to include some little things that should be big things, that's where you end up with these problems, where things just don't feel like they're fitting properly.
Right.
Because you're trying to do too much in the span of, you know, a short series versus 1,100 pages of a book. Like, you can take, we were talking about Langoliers.
Yes.
That's like a short story. It's like 50 pages. And they turned it into a 6-hour TV show.
Right. So
and they still cut out a ton of stuff.
Right, yeah.
If that gives
that's the case of expanding the original work into something bigger. It's just
how detailed King's stories are, though. Like, they're very detail-driven.
Is that perhaps why there's so much trouble adapting Stephen King works? Because a lot of them fall just flat up on their face.
Yeah.
And that's probably why, is because they're so densely layered and so much going on within his books. And that maybe that's why. But yeah, episode 6, the dome isn't destroyed, much to the amazement of the town. Nori reunites with her parents. Coggins' body is found, and Jim acts all shocked. He's practically whistling, you know, doing that little, oh, wasn't me thing. And the town is worried about running out of everything.
Yeah.
At this point,
they realize, you know, we're not getting out of here.
Yeah.
If that didn't work,
right.
We're in trouble, right?
Yeah. So at this point, the town is starting to panic. We see Dinsmore in there, basically, you know, shutting Jim down and being like, hey, you know, what are you going to do? Start yapping your way through the problem? And they argue back and forth. Linda ends up shutting that down and basically, you know, puts a pin in this. But there's some kind of weird radio interference.
Yeah, so after the bomb, the walkies aren't working, the radio signals aren't working at all. Everything's jammed. They're just getting this weird feedback. So Dodie, she makes some kind of device, and I'm not sure how that's supposed to work, but she made some kind of device that is tracking... She's trying to track the signal of what's causing the interference. And she recruits Julia to help her. Julia recruits herself, rather. And they're trying to find the source of the jam.
And Barbie is recruited to help with the town, which is, throughout this episode, going to just, like, completely fall apart. Angie and Junior are still together, but not for very long, because she remembers that she's supposed to be afraid of this person.
This person now that we didn't die.
Yeah. For 5 episodes, she's been locked in a bomb shelter, kept there by Junior. And now she's going to use a snow globe to knock him out, or at least hit him, and then run off, causing that problem there. Nori's mother is not doing well. She's low on insulin. She causes an accident, which causes a water tower to start leaking, and that's very bad news. Yeah, a truck
crashes into the water tower, which was their drinking supply. That's gone now.
And I'm like, shouldn't they be trying to, like, salvage some of this water? Like, grab a jug or something?
Yeah, I don't think they had cognizance to really comprehend the situation in that moment.
So Barbie and Linda end up going to the lake, and they find a bunch of dead fish, which is, this is the other lake. This is the one that the water source was not coming from.
Right, this is just, this is not drinking water, but they want to see if they can get drinking water from here.
But there's a bunch of dead fish there, which is a bad sign.
So there's methane in the water. And it's not drinkable. There's nothing they can do to make this water drinkable. They're
at the hospital. Caroline is discovering that there's no insulin left. And Jim is realizing that the water situation is really bad. Jim points out that there are wells within the town, one of them owned by Allie Dimsmore.
And that's the only well that's still running.
Right.
So there's other wells, but they've all dried up over the years. The only place where there's still clean drinking water is on Ollie Dinsmore's farm.
And hello, Leon Ripley again. Jim is going to go talk to him, saying that he's basically a pain in the ass. But they go way back, so he thinks he's going to convince him to help.
Yeah, but we also know they go way back in a rivalry.
Right.
It's always been a rivalry between them.
So Jim's no good bad day gets even worse when he finds out that Angie is missing. And Jim angrily tells him, hey, do your own damage control for a change.
Yeah, and Junior's like, you're the one that let her go.
Right. Barbie and Linda happen upon a store owner who is no longer accepting cash, but like batteries and such, because money is literally no good here anymore.
Yeah, and that store owner's Terry, and he's like, everybody has to have something to trade, and a fight's about to break out. One of the customers, Dre Johnson, and we'll see him again later in the season, he's trying to shop in the store, doesn't have anything to trade. They stop a riot in this moment. By, having somebody else in line loan him something to trade.
And that's basically going to be the last time that a problem in this episode is going to be so easily resolved.
Yeah, so we get the sense that tensions are really high and things are really close to falling apart. Linda, and they're doing everything they can to hold it together, but how long can you balance that when you have this many people panicked?
Linda is basically like the optimist. She's saying, you know what, I believe in the people. We can keep this together.
Yeah.
And that slowly devolves as the episode goes along. Jim goes and talks to Allie about the water problem. Allie wants payment for the water, and basically, they have a very contentious relationship, as we already revealed. It's a rivalry. Jim suggests trading the propane for the water, and Allie finds that as an acceptable payment.
Right, because he needs propane to keep his irrigation system going and run his farm.
But eventually Jim is going to come back, and Allie's going to, be, hey, look, I guess Jim is trying to, use eminent domain.
Yeah.
On it,
not yet. He's willing to trade. He's like, I'll give you, because he's got a ton of propane. We know that. Nobody really knows that yet. And he's not really revealing. He's just like, I got plenty to go around.
Right.
He's willing to pay for it, but Ollie's like, okay, well, that's a good start, but you're going to bring me another shipment every week. And it's funny because they don't even consider, like, maybe this won't go on for weeks. But,
right. No.
But he's like, yeah, every week. And of course, Jim doesn't want to keep paying him. He wants to be like, this is that. Mm-hmm. Right? We're going to use your water. You got propane. It's a done deal. And he's like, no, I don't know. Now, what's really happening here, though, is Ollie now knows that Jim has access to more propane than he should have access to.
Right.
Which is not great for Jim, because Ollie's soon going to take advantage of that information. Right, and that's going to happen in episodes after this one. But that's something important to keep in mind now, that Ollie knows about the propane.
Meanwhile, Junior is looking for Angie, happens upon Linda, who tells him, hey, I need you to do your job. And they end up going into a store where they're trying to keep things cool, trying to keep people from stealing. We encounter the lowlives that will become important figures within this episode. And they, and not for the last time that we will encounter those people.
Clint and Waylon Dundee.
And I think they actually reoccur. We actually end up seeing, no, maybe not. No, yeah, Junior ends up going after them because they get away in this episode.
Yeah, we see them over the next couple of episodes.
Nori, meanwhile, wants to find info from the hospital to find out who has insulin, and she isn't going to go ask nicely. Joe is along for the ride, despite the fact that he is not really down for the whole stealing people thing.
Okay, here's the thing. They told her there's 20-something people, I didn't write the number down, that have diabetes, that live in Chester's Mill. It's totally plausible that there's a house out there that has insulin in it, and the people are not stuck under the dome. They were away. So a lot of people weren't home. There was this big parade going on. So it's totally plausible to look for a house that's not inhabited to look for insulin.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I totally follow that. But of course she gets desperate and does get to the point where she wants to steal from people who are under the dome, not just people who didn't make it home that day.
Yeah, she ends up going to a guy's house, breaking in, and this guy ends up holding a shotgun on them. Yeah. And is basically like, what are you guys doing? And he used the last of his insulin, so he's not in a good situation.
Yeah, that character's Ray Garcia, but we won't see him again because
he's probably going to die.
Probably going to die real quickly without his insulin.
And then they end up going to a place where they happen upon a kid.
Yeah, a little boy.
The insulin is for the kid. Nori can't quite bring herself to steal from the kid, but she does end up taking a vial.
She takes one. He has a bunch, though. So she takes one, because, her mom's literally going to die today if she doesn't have it. So I don't blame her. That character is Scotty Fannin, and he's played by Luke Donaldson, who actually was in The Walking Dead.
Oh, was he now?
He played a character named Luke in The Walking Dead. He was a little boy from the prison season. So he had a recurring role throughout that season of The Walking Dead.
Meanwhile, Julia and Dottie, who are trying to track down the signal, or where the signal is being interfered from, end up finding Joe and Nori.
Right, the signal is coming directly from them.
And then they end up talking about that situation for a little bit. Joe ends up showing the video to Julia.
Right, they decide to trust her. They tell her all about their seizures and the pink stars, which is all news to her.
And so they... Okay, so Dottie ends up, Julia ends up thinking that the kids are connected to the dome, that the dome is trying to protect them. Dottie, or Dodie, rather. I couldn't quite remember her pronunciation, but I had figured it out, and now I just screwed it up. But anyway, Dodie doesn't think that there's anything touchy-feely going on here, that she needs to tell Big Jim. I don't understand why people all trust Big Jim.
Well, that's the thing, is, he runs this town. Everybody, he runs every year for election, and he's undefeated. Like, no one ever even runs against him.
But Julia, for now, says that they should keep the whole thing with the kids quiet.
Yeah.
And Dodie is convinced for
Dodie
now.
just thinks the kids are creepy, and she doesn't want anything to do with any of this. But yeah, later... They decide to touch... Well, they don't decide. They just happen to do it. They both touch the dome at the same time, Joe and Nori. And it unjams the signal.
I think I skipped way ahead to that part in the episode when that happens. Because, all the stuff I talked about happened after that. Like with the Dodie and Julia thing, talking about the dome and talking about talking to Big Jim, all happened after they touched the dome. and reset the radio stuff. So yeah, I jumped way ahead.
That's okay, because we're not meant to be doing a scene by scene.
Right, exactly. So let's see, where are we? Okay, so
we mentioned the Dundee brothers.
Yeah, Angie ends up going to Rose's after nearly encountering Junior.
She goes to the Sweetbriar Rose.
Yes.
Looking for help because she trusts Rose.
And it's funny, she tells Rose everything.
Yeah.
And it's funny because she's going to be dead really soon.
Rose, now remember, Rose is really good friends with Big Jim. But she still believes Angie.
Right.
And she says she's going to help her.
Right.
And then the Dundee brothers that we mentioned that who were involved in the store looting come into the Sweetbriar. Because they realize this restaurant's full of food.
They end up killing Rose, and Angie ends up unconscious.
Yeah, and they were about to rape Angie.
Right. And only a save by Barbie prevents that from happening. But meanwhile, in the town, there's rioting and looting going on. Linda tries to use tear gas to break it up, but as Barbie points out, it's old tear gas, and that has a shelf life, so its usefulness degrades over time. And apparently this tear gas does not work very well anymore because it's not stopping the rioting at all. Barbie ends up going into Rose's after the Dundee brother seems suspicious.
They book it.
Yeah. He ends up saving Angie, carrying the body out.
Not the body. She's alive.
Well, yes.
She's unconscious.
Right. Well, that's what I meant to say, but a lot of words. Yeah. So
Jim carries her out, and
Barbie does.
Barbie carries her out, and wants to get her to the clinic. And something to do. Oh, the police car. The tires.
Flat tires.
The tires have been slit. So they end up entrusting who but Big Jim to get her to the clinic.
Yes, and that's really unfortunate.
So they pass the unconscious Andy off to Big Jim. He doesn't take her to the clinic.
Nope, big surprise there. Oh, and basically at this point, the rioting is getting to the point where Linda's just basically going to be like, all right, pulling out my gun.
She's ready to start shooting people.
And at that moment, it starts to rain.
It starts to rain, which instantly snaps everybody out of what they're doing.
Which is absurd. There's a riot going on here right now.
Well, remember, the riot is because there's no water.
I mean, fair enough, but still, they're all rioting and being violent, and then they're just suddenly like...
They suddenly got a moment of hope, where they said, oh, maybe it's not as futile as we thought, and wow, we're being crazy right now, trying to kill each other over a loaf of bread.
Yeah, I don't know that it would just instantly stop like that.
Yeah.
But...
So this whole scene does mirror something that happens in the book. So I won't say too much about that, but you'll see when you get there. I actually just got past that part.
Gotcha.
Where there's this huge grocery store riot.
Yeah. Okay. So the rioting is over. It's raining. Jim says, let's get some garbage cans and collect all this rain. Yeah. And the good thing about it raining is that the water is being filtered as it's raining.
Right. So, yeah.
Is that
the dome
real?
Has its own ecosystem now. So it's doing its own water cycle. It's filtering the rain, and it's got its own clouds or whatever, and it's making the water drinkable again. Now, here's my question. If that's the case, why couldn't you have taken the methane lake water and filtered it yourselves?
Right.
Like you said, there was no way to clean it.
Yeah, I mean, they did mention that it could be filtered.
Did
but
they?
They did mention filtering, but they said it could take a while, and I don't know, that it might be difficult to filter because of what's in there.
Maybe if this character that doesn't appear to be here yet, that we meet in season 2, was around.
Yeah, she could have helped us out.
She could have figured that out pretty easily.
Yeah, we'll talk more about her in a little bit, but yeah, her absence here is conspicuous, given the fact that we see her eventually.
The fact that she eventually becomes like, I'm in the middle of everything happening.
Right. Yep. So Nori and Joe go back to the clinic with the insulin to save her mother's life.
Yeah, she will live for today.
Nori, the optimist, wonders what will happen when she needs her next dose. Now, that vial was only good for 1 dose.
I think like a couple doses, like a day.
Okay. Julie and Barbie end up kissing in the rain. Isn't that romantic?
They made up.
Yes. I mean, mostly I find their character arcs fine, but I also find it kind of absurd at the same time. But we'll talk about that some other time. When we get to part 2, maybe. Angie ends up waking up at Big Jim's, and she's offered a deal. Keep silent about Junior in exchange for help, or basically keeping Junior away from her.
Yeah, he basically said, I'll give you anything you need. I'm going to help you get resources. And she's like, well, I need you to protect my brother, too. I need to know he's going to be taken care of. And Jim's like, of course. So now, he's saying, I don't want anybody to know that my son kidnapped you.
Now,
so I'm going to protect you, and I'm going to help you.
I'm curious, because he's already shown that he doesn't have any compunction about killing people.
Right.
Why not just kill her and dispose of her? Why bother with any of this?
I don't think he wants to kill people. He just doesn't have a problem doing it if he has to.
Gotcha.
He's willing to look for other ways. You know, he didn't kill Coggins immediately when he got stupid.
I mean, he could have very easily at any point.
He waited to see the situation play out. You know, I mean, he was willing to let him die in the fire, but at that point, he wasn't willing to kill him by his own hand. It's a last resort for him. He has no problem doing it, but he's not looking to do it as a first course of action.
Gotcha.
Now, if Angie was like, no, I'm going to go tell, he probably would have slit her throat right there.
So, yeah, the whole thing, oh, yeah, you're free to leave no matter what, is kind of bullshit, because he probably would have killed her if she said the wrong things.
Right.
And I'm sure she's probably aware of that on some level. So, yeah, and she ends up agreeing to this, and Junior ends up popping in at the end of the episode, right when they're having this conversation.
Yep.
Plenty of awkward moments there. So yeah, that's the end of episode 6. That's the end of what we were covering for this batch of episodes. Yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, these are pretty good episodes. I just, I think I have a problem with the approach series-wide of how they handled some of this stuff. Like, they just blow straight through plot points that should have been, like, you know, series-wide, honestly. Like food shortages.
And yeah, they move on to like completely different storylines.
Right. And I think that's the biggest problem with the series, is that like their focus just goes all over the place.
Right.
Do you have any comments about this back half, this part of the season?
No, we covered everything I have in my notes.
I think next
week... no, we didn't.
Wait.
Okay, no, that happens next. Okay, we got it. That happens next episode.
All right.
We kind of left a few things hanging in this episode that continue in episode 7. So we'll talk about that in our next time we visit this series.
Yep.
And we'll cover the rest of season 1 in that.
Okay.
In that episode.
Sounds good. All right. Stacie we want to hear from you. Stacie can be reached at?
I can be reached on Twitter, X, Instagram, Threads, at TVN Coupon Talk.
All right. If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join my Core Productions Facebook page. You can buy something from the Core Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee, which is a new way to support content creators such as ourselves. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to our channel. This is Dave and Stacie from Core Productions, signing off.